everybody. It's finale time. It's review time. It's fun time. We are here, and we've got our usual crew at our usual time, and we've got a lot to talk about. Thank you all for joining us. Something we've said a million times, probably not literally, but maybe. No, no, not literally. We'll probably say again, though, is that the books and show are just such vastly different mediums. You guys know that, but it bears repeating because it's interesting to note where those differences lie. You know, and the books have a lot more depth. They have a lot more detail that no show could even hope to match. Even if, you know, we got everything we wanted from Dave and Dan, they still wouldn't be able to match the level of detail of the books. It's just not possible. But the show has strengths that no book could ever hope to match. I'm speaking to obvious things like acting, music, cinematography, things like that. And this episode had that in spades. I thought that it really played to the strengths of the visual medium. It gave the actors wide berth to do their thing. For example, the tension in the dragon pit. So much of that was body language, facial expressions, things like that. And that's, you know, no writer can capture that. No writer, even George R. R. Martin. You cannot write those kind of looks that, say, Lena Headey gave to Peter Dinklage, in which he specifically said, Peter Dinklage that is, said that the look flattened him, you know, and there's just no writing that sort of thing. Our brains process the written word much differently than we process things like facial expressions. And of course, there's things like the undead dragon. Like, that's just, wow. George, if he ever writes an undead dragon, I mean, it's not a sure thing in the books, it's no doubt going to be amazing, and the plot around it will be amazing. But there's still nothing like seeing it. Side note, by the way, someone needs to write books that when you turn the page, music starts playing. Certain music is attached to certain aspects of the book. Because that's just one of the things, especially in this episode, but consistently in Game of Thrones, the music just adds so much to a scene. Anyway, acting, music, and action are not exactly enough for us. You know, we're book fans first. We crave a good story. I thought it was solid in that regard, especially comparing it to their norms. But what about you guys? Welcome back, Radio Westeros. Let's start with your first takes on the episode, just initial impressions. Lady Gwen, you go first.
I was very pleased about some of the character development, more so than in earlier episodes. Still, you know, as always, there's still missing some things, but overall, I like the storyline.
Cool. Well, we're glad to have you back here again, and hopefully we're going to have you be part of some of our post-season adventures. And I know you guys just put out a new episode yourself, so Yoke Boy, give us your first thoughts on the episode, but also tell everyone about your new Radio Westeros episode that just came out.
Okay, thanks, Aziz. I thought it was a big improvement on last week. There was some human moments that I really liked. You know, I feel like as the series is going on, it's getting more about the kind of effects and stuff. But in this episode, there were some really nice human moments, and it was great to see. So, you know, overall, I was pretty pleased. But like Lady Gwyn says, you know, there's a few things that could have been improved, I think.
All right, and how about that new Radio Westeros episode?
Yeah, we got
but not this moment exactly, yeah.
If you're an insomniac, we got you covered tonight.
Yeah, right. That's for sure. And speaking of, I'm pulling a double tonight, the equivalent of a YouTuber double, which is after this episode, I'll be jumping on Raw Risk Stream to do a lot of the same things, but it'll be a different group, different kinds of things will come up, and we'll have a good time. So if y'all haven't gotten sick of it, join us over there afterwards, or join me and the other us over there afterwards. That'll be fun. Okay. So, yeah, very excited to hear about your new episode. And, you know, we're going to be continuing. Like I said, we're going to have some more episodes after the season. Like we always do, we're going to have some guests on. And frankly, this is more important than usual because there's so many things to cover. This episode was so long and it says so many things about next season. So, I don't know. There's just a lot to say. So this will probably be an extra long stream. But Ashay, what are your first takes on the episode?
I liked the episode. I wondered, and I'll talk about it more later, how much my impression was colored by knowing a lot of these spoilers for what was going to happen here. For instance, Sansa and Arya being a setup. I didn't feel this sense of stress about things going south there because I knew it was a setup, and so I still got that satisfaction. So I don't know if my opinion is slightly skewed by the spoilers.
It probably would be, but it's good to get takes from people who approach the material in a different way. I think because a lot of other people were aware of some of the, maybe even without watching leaked episodes, they looked at the scripts or something like that, kind of like you did. Mm-hmm. And that, there's other people I'm sure who are watching today or who will listen later that were in the same boat as you. So it has a different effect when you kind of know certain things that are happening. Hmm. So let's see here. We still have our GRM box giveaway going on. We've given away 3 of them, and there's still 2 more to go, so it is not too late. If you're already entered, no need to do anything. Your name is still in the drawing. If you haven't entered, it's Westeros History Giveaway at gmail.com. That's the email. Put your subject as giveaway. And, it's funny. We didn't know this would happen, but we've been getting the emails from people, and people don't want to just say giveaway and leave it blank. They've been saying things, very nice things to us.
Yeah, so we've got about 1,000 emails from you guys to go through because we want to read them all, but we haven't been able to. Game of Thrones season is so difficult, but we'll be able to soon.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for that. Appreciate the kind words, and we will keep the content coming. Certainly after the season, we aren't going to be putting out 3 episodes a week after the season, but we will be putting out a lot of content, more live streams. Scripted episodes will be returning, starting with Blackfish. And moving on from there, Zeus versus Chapter. We've got the Crypts of Winterfell. We've got Bloodraven. We got a lot coming, folks. It's going to be great. And, of course, we have Sons of the Dragon, some actual new material to delve into as well. So the party doesn't stop when the season ends. It just changes. So thanks to all of our patrons who enable us to be spending so much time podcasting. Thanks also to Radio Westeros' patrons. Thanks to Jeff Gnarly, the Long Snapper, History of Westeros' First Sword. And thanks to our Dragon Rider patrons. Mazla Cartho is ridden by Lord Mark of House Joseph. That's a white dragon with green scales, horns, wings, and talons. And Lord Mark is helping us out as a chat mod as well, looking for some of your great questions. He has access to our episode document, so if you have a particularly good question, he's going to throw it in the document for us to answer, because Ashaya can't be monitoring the chat like she does when she's not behind the camera. So also thanks to Talanis the Talon, King of Gagassos, Rider of Telarius, Red Dragon with scales, horns, and talons of Midnight Black, and Jinx of House Lier, Green Queen of the Rainwood. Rider of Erogenia, a sylphic albino dragon with amethyst eyes and opalescent wings, and sender of large amounts of packages. Okay. Yeah, so that covers the announcements. We had a couple of super chats sent already. The first one was from Jessica Pick, and that was more of a shout out. So thank you for that, Jessica. And we appreciate that. Also from Waxed Paper Door, who says, "Hey guys, joining you from Northern Ireland for the first time." Well, thanks for that. Always cool to hear from people in different places. Ireland, I think, is about the 5th or 6th the place that watches us, like 5th or 6th. I think it's US, UK, I think Canada, I think Australia. I think Ireland is 5th or 6th. So we do get a decent amount of the Irish here. And I am about 3/4 Irish myself. You couldn't tell by my name, but I am wearing green. Mm-hmm. I got the Hypnotoad on the Iron Throne here in case no one could catch that. Ashaya's got this awesome Targ dress too, which, kind of makes me look like a schlub, but I always happen standing next to Ashaya. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, the question continues from Wax Paper Door. Do you think Jaime's break with Cersei in the show more satisfying because it took so long from a book reader's point of view? And if not, why not? Well, it was kind of a relief because it looked like it wasn't going to ever happen. It was like, man, Jaime's just going to stick with her. So I don't know if it was more satisfying, but it was more relieving because, and of course it hasn't actually, it's kind of happened in the books. I mean, he burned the letter, but he hasn't totally gone against her yet, so it's kind of unclear. Cersei isn't even aware that Jaime's, didn't, threw her letter in the fire and went off to look for Brienne. So what about you guys? What do you think about this moment? I know that Lady Gwen in particular, you were perhaps the most frustrated of all of us about Jaime's arc, but
yeah, I had pretty much given up on this ever happening. So it was, as you say, it was a relief. So I'm very pleased. We'll see what happens next.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a big deal, and this is one of those things, right? I've been talking about how we're going to focus on what just happened and not too much on what's coming because we've got more time to cover what's coming later. And there's so much of it. I mean, we could talk for 2 hours just on what Jaime might do in the north, how people might react to him. But the fact that he has a Valyrian steel blade that he's going north with, that if, there's so much to say about that. But it's going to take us just, this stream just to cover how it happened and, let alone what's coming next. So, this episode being so long is presenting us with some fun problems. Super chat from Acre Frey.
Mm-hmm. You can read that.
It says, so you have 3/4 of an iris wrist. You have
That's why you're
3/4 of an
reading it.
iris wristwatch. Just kidding. Hope you're prepping for a 4-hour stream. Yeah, this plus the raw stream after, I'll be streaming for a while. I think this one will probably not go longer than 3 hours. But hey, if we do, we do. It's possible.
You hear that, Yoke Boy? Are you stoked?
And yeah, we got 1,000 live viewers on Monday, which if you guys have been following our show-only streams, that means we got Sean to dance, which actually happened. We have a video of it, and there's going to be a more full version later. That was the impromptu version that we posted. And Yoke Boy apparently is going to drink some Earl Grey tea if we get to 1,000 tonight, which is, that's... Whoa.
That's far out. I'm pushing it. I think I'm a little bit more reserved than Sean. We are English over here, But I'm for real. Shit just got real.
Earl Grey, for real. This isn't Earl Black or Earl White because that's not how George R. R. Martin writes things. This is Earl Grey.
I'll even put 2 tea bags in 1 cup just so you can all see me off my
Slow
head.
down, man. This is...
Whoa.
We cannot keep up with this. What do we have here? Another super chat?
Mm-hmm.
Super chat from Emma Smith.
No question. I just realized I haven't actually attended the Book to Show stream live and wanted to show my appreciation for Radio Westeros too. Well, thank
Yeah.
you, Emma Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.
That's right. Just in case y'all missed the earlier announcements, all super chat revenue is split 50-50 with Radio Westeros, so supporting us supports them as well. So
If Yoke Boy drinks the tea, he gets 75.
yeah, that's right. I mean, if he's going to put that much, if he's going to go that far, he's earned it, right?
It'd be like compensation.
Yeah.
Wow.
If we're gonna give you that much of a hangover, it may as well be worth your while. So our after season live streams will, at least the first couple, will come at the usual times: Monday at 7 and Wednesday at 6. Those are, of course, our Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be announcing who our guests are going to be over the next couple of days. So check our social media for that, or just show up and be surprised. So let's start with King's Landing. I've divided King's Landing into a few different sections because there's, kind of the pre and post and during. So we'll talk about before the Dragon Pit meeting first. We'll start with Bran and Jaime on the battlements, where they're intimidated. And there's great music accompanying this moment.
No wonder they were intimidated with that music playing.
They're like, oh, that's action music. We better watch out. And there was a funny conversation that had a lot of serious undertones to it. They were joking about it all comes down to penises or whatever. But that was kind of poignant. Like, what motivates people to fight for their family or for gold, or just why do people do the things they do? And also Bronn talking about how he loves it when people call him Lord. I think then that has a little undertone to it too, because he wants that castle. He still wants that castle. And well, now Jaime's gone, so well, more on Bronn later. What did you guys think about this scene in general?
I mean, I thought the same thing you mentioned about talking about how maybe it's all cocks in the end. It made me think of all of the pop culture jokes about that in Game of Thrones, specifically South Park calling you out, because it was really inaccurate. There really haven't been very many at all, but I think this was maybe a pointed line at that.
Yeah, and less than it used to be too. I mean, the sex position in Game of Thrones has very much dropped off. It was a big part of the earlier seasons, and as much as people, us included, love that they had book material to draw off before, they just seemed to just jam that stuff in there, and somehow moving past the books, they also moved past all the sex position, at least most of it. So that's cool. What about you guys? I know you had a thought on this, Yoke Boy.
Yeah, all this talk about cocks and everything. The gods of tits and wine will be happy. My thought was I would like to know, what happened with the Unsullied. I was really curious to know. It's one of the spin-offs, Grey Worm walking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see that journey. You're right. Just how they got from Casterly Rock to King's Landing.
It must have been a slog, difficulties trying to find food and all that. But you can see how they made it. They're so tough and strong, and it's not a surprise that they got there. But yeah, no talk of it at all.
If Game of Thrones ever had webisodes, I think they would have.
Oh yeah,
that.
They could do like animated webisodes. That'd be so cool. And it's interesting that Jaime is the one discussing this, because Jaime is least of all someone who thinks with his cock. That he just has never thought, other than when it pertains to Cersei. But he's not a guy that is really driven by that. So that's kind of interesting, and that made him an interesting counterpart to Bronn, who is has this soldier's attitude. That all of them, that's all they care about, blah blah blah. So it was kind of neat to have those guys have that convo. And then, just as intimidated as Jaime and Bronn may have been by the Unsullied and Dothraki, we have them sailing into King's Landing with Euron's fleet just sitting there like, yeah, that's kind of scary. And that was really, we showed it on Monday, the shot of the Red Keep with the ships behind it. That is one of the most, that's maybe the best shot of King's Landing we've ever seen. And there's been some great ones. Maybe it's matched by the King's Landing in the snow later. That was really good too. So, Lady Gwen, you had some thoughts on this scene.
What I thought it was funny, remember this is Jon's first time seeing King's Landing.
Yeah.
Unless I'm missing something. He's sitting there trying to figure out why people would choose to live in this place. How many people live there? There's more people there than there are in the entire North, at least according to show canon. And he just doesn't get it. And as a country girl born and raised, I could kind of relate.
As someone who's lived in both, I've lived in Brooklyn, and I've lived in the suburbs, and a lot of different places. It's definitely very different. Both of them have their advantages, but I kind of like having a lot of space living in the suburbs.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. I'm from Hawaii originally. I'm from a very small island with like one town on the whole island, Lanai. And so when we go to, when we go to the continental United States, it's called the mainland. And you go there, and it's just like you could just drive and drive and drive and never reach the end. Whereas on the islands I'm from, like nothing is more than 30 minutes away. Stuff like that. So I could definitely relate with Jon being so baffled by this.
And this is why we wanted Tormund to come.
Yeah,
so he
exactly.
could be like, whoa.
Right.
I just rode on a dragon, but this is really wow.
We got a super chat from Michael Lawrence Young. What did y'all think of the parallel between the Jaime-Cersei split in conjunction with the incest of Jon and Dany? You think Martin will use a similar parallel? What do you think he is trying to express? Well, clearly there can't be more than a few minutes without incest.
Yeah,
I think that's it.
That's what I tweeted right after the episode. That Game of Thrones had about 2-3 minutes of no incest before they jumped right back on the train. From the very first episode, there's incest. And then it's just like pretty much the theme all the way through, and then they stopped, but then Dany and Jon got the train rolling again. I don't think George will do a similar thing, because it looks like Jaime and Cersei are kind of done already in the books, and Jon and Dany are a long way from hooking up in the books at this point. Dany's still in the Dothraki Sea, and Jon is dead. So it's going to be a minute. So I don't know if those will line up as well, but he may find a way to connect it, nonetheless, even though it may not line up the way I'm thinking. George is creative. We'll give him some leeway. So that we'll have to wait and see on that, I suppose. And we have another super chat, is that right?
No.
Oh, you just pasted that one below it. Okay.
That was from before.
Okay, cool. All right then. So let's talk about Cersei and Jaime before the meeting. Obviously, the juiciest stuff comes during and after, but there was some interesting moments before. You could kind of see, especially if you rewatch it, you kind of get a sense of just how out of the loop Jaime is, that he doesn't even realize it, and as he starts to realize that, or is confronted with it, really, it really affects his decision. It's a big part of why he leaves. So, did you guys have any takes on this moment? I thought that maybe the most interesting part was Cersei talking about who to kill first.
Yeah, her order was interesting, wasn't it? The silver-haired bitch. Then Tyrion, then Jon. My feelings when she said that was just kind of she really doesn't realize that Dany's going to show up on her dragon, which I guess we can talk about that in a few minutes. But that I thought it seemed obvious, and I missed that.
Yeah. We have another super chat here
from Danny Jeter. How does the Iron Fleet avoid dragons passing Dragonstone 5 times?
Well, I think it's not nearly as close as people are making it out.
I don't think it's nearly as close, and I don't think Daenerys is even trying to. She's not trying to close off to Blackwater Bay.
If Dany had better military advisors, this is something we talked about all season long. It's not bad writing; it's that she has bad military advising. Tyrion admits that he really screwed up badly in not anticipating Euron attacking the fleet that was going to Dorne. And that just goes to show he's inexperienced. And we've been talking about all these. If Jorah had been there or Barristan had been there, it would be bad writing for them not to block off the dragons, to block off Blackwater Bay to have flying dragon patrols over. Of course, it would have to be Dany doing the dragon patrols herself, but she's more than capable of doing that. So, yeah, I think the books will probably go into greater detail with the strategic aspects of these locations, but given that they've established Daenerys' military leadership is poor, I can buy that they just aren't handling this that way.
So, to move on.
Let's move on. We have Podrick and Tyrion. We have Tyrion and Bran. This is a bevy of kind of short meetings, reunions, and cool stuff being discussed. It was really fun. Obviously, we wanted more. There were so many other meetings that could have happened, but I think by now we're all used to the fact that they just can't have a bunch of different conversations, and we're mostly just got to be satisfied with what they do, assuming they do some of it. And they did do a fair amount of it this episode.
Yeah, there was one conversation I wished we'd had. As I saw this moment, I saw Brienne and Jon Snow, and I was just expecting Brienne to talk to Jon about how things are going at Winterfell or to get a message or anything. It didn't happen. They had other bigger, more important conversations to have. But I have to think they would have said something to each other.
You wonder if that's because he did send a letter back. Remember, as we saw, that Bran was like, no, I got a letter. It wasn't my green site or whatever to Sam. Maybe Brienne was off screen, would be the one that was like, hey, dude, you need to communicate back there. They're kind of waiting for you to to report back here. But yeah, and given that they're traveling together, it might mean that they're just, well, we can have Brienne and Jon talk later. Because they know they'll have that opportunity later. We'll see.
We have a super chat from Laura B. I don't see a question here, Laura, but if you have one, I'll keep my eye out for it. Oh, we got another super chat, though, from Matt H. Shout out from Vermont. I've been listening to you guys forever, but have never caught the live show. Best Song of Ice and Fire content on the Werewood net.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. So are we on...
We're now on Podrick and Tyrion, okay. I think. And it was cool for them to... Well, no, I guess there's more to say about Bran and Tyrion. He brings up I love to hear that he brought up that I'll offer you twice, remember? And now that Jaime is gone, Bran's already didn't like the idea of fighting dragons, and he was saying how in trouble they are, and now with Jaime gone, which is the only person that he can really count on to maybe ever give him a castle, and given the fact that Lena Headey and Jerome Flynn can't shoot scenes together because they hate each other in real life, everything seems to point towards Bran either just leaving entirely or flipping sides to be with, like a sellsword would, to flip to the winning side. But if he's aware that Cersei's got this planned betrayal, I don't know. What do you guys think about Bran?
Yeah, I think their opportunities with him are kind of wide open because, they're so far off what we know about real Bran. So I think probably he's going to go... he's probably going to go off in search of Jaime or Tyrion or something. Whatever is going to suit Bran, whatever is going to...
Jaime really should have given him a heads up, huh? Right? If you guys think he's just going to go after him.
Hey, come with me. Come with me, Bran. Could use some help on the road. But more on that a bit later, because at this point in our coverage, Jaime still hasn't left yet. So let's move on to... Podrick and Tyrion, that was a really nice conversation. It was good that happened, and it was good to see them on the same side again. For a while they were on opposite sides, and it's cool that now they're not. That was good. Good to see him and Joe. I almost called him Joe Dempsey. I sometimes get Podrick and Gendry confused. And now I'm forgetting
Daniel Portman.
Daniel Portman, who I've met in real life, which is bizarre that I can't think of his name. And he really loved filming that scene too. He thought it was really good for their characters. Did you guys have any thoughts on Podrick and Tyrion? Guess the scene kind of speaks for
I
itself.
guess that. No, I don't. No, really, sorry.
No worries, no worries. We have a super chat here.
Yeah, from Acre Frey. You can read that, Aziz.
John could get it up for Danny. Does that mean Ungregor could get it up for the Septa? Now, why did you have to take us there?
God.
That's why I let you read that one, Aziz.
Well, these are different. We can at least say these are different types of resurrections. You know, one is the sort of science-y resurrection from Qyburn, and the other is more of a magical kind. So, I don't know. I hope not. I hope he's the mountain that's limp.
Yeah. So yeah, more pleasant subjects. Bran and Sandor.
This is a much more pleasant subject. That's the closest we've ever seen to Sandor smiling, isn't it?
I mean, he was smiling. He was straight up smiling, I think.
I felt like his mouth was even, which maybe to him is a smile, but his eyes were smiling. That was to me that was the distinction. But obviously, your mileage may vary. Yokeboy, what did you think?
I thought that their chat earlier, I said there's a few kind of very human moments in the show this week that I really liked, that kind of gave it an extra bit of sparkle. And this was one of them that I was referring to. It's just so nice to see this kind of, a few minutes spent on slow-paced characterization. I feel like it adds a lot to it that CGI can't. And seeing the Hound and Brienne talk about Arya and kind of reminiscing and, agreeing that she's a well-formed badass was really satisfying for me.
And I see a great pun here in the chat. Eves Calliart, sorry if I said your name wrong, says res erection, huh? Oh, yes, good one. So that's the setup for the scene. We get a lot of people chatting with each other while they're walking in.
To the Dragon Pit.
Of course, the Dragon Pit itself.
Right now.
Shay has pulled up this great image of the Dragon Pit, which is a good bit different from the books, but this is one of those things that, like, I will never complain about the locations they choose because they can't build a Dragon Pit in real life. They got to go with real world locations and just make do. And this is an awesome location. This was really cool. And we got some history on the Dragon Pit. We got some show version of it. We had Tyrion talking about it. We had Davos talking about it. We had at least one other person talking. I think 3 different people brought it up.
I saw some people asking about why there was such a tiny dragon skull there. When the Dragon Pit was destroyed, presumably, and out of use, the dragons wouldn't have been much smaller. But this is a show, we can assume that they don't have to have the same history.
A few small details changed.
I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so Yokeboy, give us Barristan's take here on the Dragon Pit.
Yeah, Sir Barristan. The Dragon Pit, it is called. It stands atop the hill of Rhaenys, though all in ruins now. That was where the royal dragons dwelt in days of yore, and a cavernous dwelling it was, with iron doors so wide that 30 knights could ride through them abreast. Yet, even so, it was noted that none of the pit dragons ever reached the size of their ancestors.
Nice. And Lady Gwen, you also have a quote prepared here. This is Tyrion, right?
Yep, this is Tyrion in Game of Thrones, and he's talking about the skulls in the below the Iron Keep. What did I just say?
The Iron Keep. The Red Throne.
Whatever. Okay.
We know what you meant.
You know what I meant. It's been a long week so far. So, there were 19 skulls. The oldest was more than 3,000 years old. The youngest, a mere century and a half. The more recent was also the smallest, a matched pair no bigger than mastiff skulls and oddly misshapen, all that remained of the last 2 hatchlings born on Dragonstone. They were the last of the Targaryen dragons, perhaps the last dragons anywhere, and they had not lived very long. So I think those skulls that we saw Danny and John looking at, that you mentioned a minute ago, weren't necessarily supposed to be one of those because that would have been after, as you said. But I think that was just meant to convey that same sense of diminishment that story gave us. So.
Right on. Yeah, well said. So then we kind of continue with the meetings. We have like a one last little moment before things start to get more tense, and that's Podrick and Brienne. I said it again. I did the same thing on Monday. I said Brienne. It's Bran and Brienne. Okay, these are two different people, Aziz. So, Yoke Boy, tell us your thoughts on this.
You know, I would have really liked to see Bronn witness the White because he's such a fantastic actor, and I feel like he's being, you know, one of the strongest actors this season for sure in the earlier episodes, and I would have just loved to see his reaction. But as you alluded to, he used to date Lena Headey, and they're contracted to not be in the same scenes. It's very restricting. So, as we were discussing earlier, it probably points to him leaving with Jaime.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just too many things pointing that way. Not just Bronn's character, but these meta reasons. So it's just everything is pointing towards it. And it really did also is kind of maybe a clever way to handle it because it kind of added to the tension of the scene. It was like, wait, what's going on here? Because it was very suspicious, you know, and there were a lot of people exchanging looks about that. But then they started exchanging looks about just each other's presences. So, Yoke Boy, tell us about that. There's a lot of glances that were very important here, weren't there?
Yeah, I read into these glances. I thought that the sequence was in a certain order for a reason. There was the Brienne, Jaime, and Cersei. I thought that was significant. In the books, these three kind of form a triangle wherein the theme comes up of beauty, honor, and loyalty, and that's kind of explored in this triangle. But the show has veered drastically from their kind of plot. However, this three-way glance ignite this kind of rebirth of what we were expecting from Jaime, which we did talk about.
Right on. Yeah, and then, you know, I think, like you say, Brienne, Jaime, Cersei was probably the main gazes that really had a big effect. But obviously Tyrion, Cersei was right up there. And then there was also Theon and Euron, and just a couple of glances around by people like Missandei. Maybe wasn't looking at anyone in particular. They were just kind of nervous and looking for traps. The same with Davos and other people. Then, of course, we get, this is like a pre-fight stare down. And given our expectations for Clegane Bowl, it's kind of perfect, right? Like, this is a pre-fight stare down.
We talked about how I wasn't very hyped for Clegane Bowl. I was just more, you know, moderate about the idea. I didn't really care like everyone else did. But a verbal Clegane Bowl on one side only.
That's a one side.
That's more my speed, to be honest. I liked that a lot.
So, Lady Gwen, what did you think about this moment?
Well, I think it was pretty good. Sanders, you know, had a lot to say for himself this season. I kind of loved it when he leaned in and looked Gregor in the eye, and he can look him in the eye, can he? He's just about the same size as him.
Weird
close.
Red eyes, yeah.
He's looking at his creepy with the blue skin around.
Yeah.
He said, you know who's coming for you. You've always known. And that reminded me, of course, of the Elder Brothers' words about Sandor Clegane in A Feast for Crows. He says, where other men dream of love or wealth or glory, this man, Sandor Clegane, dreamed of slaying his own brother. And like many other people, I think there's serious unfinished business between these two brothers in the books as well as in the show, in spite of the Quiet Isle storyline where, you know, Sandor Clegane is at rest. I don't really think so. I think he's got this. He's coming for him. He's
resting. He's getting ready. His
leg
needs to heal.
Right.
Yeah. And Elder Brothers' words are such a huge part of the evidence that no longer needs to be given. I mean, there's probably nobody left who thinks that the Gravedigger isn't Sandor Clegane. But at the time, when that was far from settled, the fact that Elder Brother knew so much about Sandor Clegane's, you know, hopes and dreams was a big tell. I was like, how does he know that?
Yeah.
There was a great interview this week by Huffington Post with Rory McCann, who plays the Hound, and we were going to grab some favorite quotes, but we didn't. But really, you guys should just read the article because it's absolutely hilarious. He talks about, he basically trash talks, you know, the Mountain and says that he's going to win Clegane Bowl.
And they both do a little trash talking. It's hilarious. He's like, they both say that they would win. He's like, no, he's 100% wrong.
Yeah, I win 100% of the time.
Yeah, it's
like
so
that.
it's.
You got to read the article. Just look up Rory McCann. Huffington Post,
he's a really interesting guy. Apparently, he doesn't even own a television. He's an actor who doesn't own a television. He's like, he goes out on boat trips with Richard Dormer. Apparently they're like friends.
I think they were friends. I guess they knew each other from way back in the first Brotherhood Without Banners thing. Maybe they've been in other stuff before.
They're both English actors, right? I guess they're both English.
Sense.
Or is McCann? Is he Irish? I guess he's Irish.
Yeah. Same thing to us. No, I'm joking. I'm sorry, everyone.
Oh,
but I don't know what McCann is, honestly.
McCann is an Irish last name.
Okay.
If it was Maccan, it would be Scottish.
We got super chat though from Paul Vidal, from Vidal Sassoon or something. Shout out
Upscale.
from shout out from New Jersey. Do you ever feel that the show gets a bit too high fantasy for your taste compared to the books? Thanks, love both your shows a ton.
Oh, Rory McCann is Scottish.
He is Scottish.
Okay, my bad.
Well, then, now there you guys
Can't
go.
always judge by the last name.
Apparently. But as for your question, Paul, I can't speak for everyone else, but for me, there's definitely been a few moments that were too high magic for me. I remember very clearly one where it was just too much was the scene where Bran and Jojen and Mira are going to the cave, and there's full skeleton whites, there's fireballs being thrown. That was too much for me. And for me, the ice javelin was too much. But I don't know why that is and a dragon isn't, but it is. That's my line.
And here's the thing: a lot of the high fantasy moments are yet to come in the books.
Mm-hmm.
To my take is that if I said it backwards. I got the Mac and Mick back. Someone's correcting me. That's why I got confused. Okay, so Mac is Irish and Mick is Scottish. Okay, thank you for the correction, people. We have such knowledgeable commenters. Always
Isn't Rob McElhenney Irish, though? Because he has an Irish pub and all that? And it's Mick?
I don't know.
we should get away from this topic.
we clearly aren't up. We clearly haven't studied our Scottish and Irish differences. Anyway, what I don't like is when they substitute high fantasy for character development or something like that. Like when it gets in the way of the other stuff, it kind of bothers me. But I kind of get that this is part of the draw for the wider fandom. So I kind of tolerate it because this is what brings more people into the fandom. This is what brings people closer to gives people a chance to maybe one day pick up the books, which is kind of the ultimate goal in my mind. So, but really the main thing to me is they just haven't gotten this far yet in the books. Maybe there will be, I kind of doubt the Night King is going to throw a lance to take out a dragon in the books.
Yeah,
but there could be some pretty big high fantasy.
I kind of doubt we're gonna have a Night King period in the book.
Agreed.
I don't know. It's possible we have some, leader figure that comes out, but I don't know. I don't think
we probably will have dragons fighting the dead, though, right?
Yeah.
In some form or fashion, and that is gonna look pretty high fantasy. Dragons fighting undead doesn't get much more high fantasy than that, right? Okay, so let's talk about Dany's entrance. This is a real power move.
Yeah, she makes this huge entrance. I love it.
Yeah, and behind the scenes, Lena Headey was talking about how her character hated it so much. She's like, here she comes with her big, powerful dragon. Cersei hates people who are more powerful than her. And then she's all young and beautiful, and she hates that. And she made everyone wait, which is a power move. She hates that, so there's just so much for her to hate.
Yeah. In the parlay between Renly and Stannis, Renly made Stannis wait. So that is a point that George has made in the past about, people using this little device to irritate their opponents. I was surprised that Cersei didn't see this coming, like I alluded to earlier. But
wait till Dany arrives, then come out. Yeah, when you hear the dragon yell, then start walking out.
It's gonna be like I don't know, that old trope from different comedy shows or whatever, where there's two actors in general, and one's I'm not leaving my trailer until so and so leaves their trailer. I'm not leaving my trailer until they. How do you get them both out of the trailer? For one example would be 30 Rock. Jenna Maroney and Tracy Morgan constantly are trying to have this status play.
Big egos in a humorous setting. So we have, before they can start talking, Tyrion comes out. He starts to talk, and Euron just jumps in there and does his bit. He says he has Yara, but
yeah. Does that mean that she's on Pike or on his ship? I'm
call,
not sure.
yeah.
It seems like safer maybe to have her on Pike, maybe less safe. I could see an argument both ways. Certainly, if he's going to Essos to get the Golden Company, it makes more sense to me for Theon's plot to come into conflict with that, for him to go after Yara when she's with the Golden Company, rather than him going for Pike. But if he went for Pike, that makes it a lot easier.
It's true, and like you said, he could have easily left her at Pike when he was attacking Casterly Rock. That was all the way around. So yeah, so that's kind of an open question at this point, and it'd be funny if Theon shows up to rescue someone who's not there, but it also might make it easier. But more on that later.
I really liked in this sequence, they had this bit with Tyrion asking Theon if he remembers what they discussed about dwarf jokes. And so Theon says that Euron's wasn't very good. And Tyrion goes, he explained it at the end. Never explain. Always ruins it.
That was good.
I like that. I prefer, explaining the joke. I will explain a joke even if someone didn't get it. I'm on Team Euron there, I guess.
So then there's some, arguing, and Tyrion's like, hold on, we got to show you this. And this is where the whole plan of showing people a white really pays off, because it really is terrifying to see it. Even if you're just lying about it being terrifying like Euron, the lie kind of worked because it's believable, because it is terrifying, and it's that thing that Tyrion brought up much earlier, that our brains aren't meant to handle these kind of problems. You can't feel how you should feel when you hear that there's an army of the dead out there. You have to see it to really feel it and to make you take action. And that really played out for a lot of characters like Brienne and Jaime. And it had the impact on Cersei, but Cersei still didn't change her bottom line. So what did you think here, Yoke Boy? We'll start with you.
Okay, so I just want to tell you about this GIF that I saw today on the internet. When Sandor kicks over the crate, someone had cut it with, I think, season 4, where Tyrion gets out of a crate. So it looks like Sandor kicks the crate open, and instead of a white, Tyrion crawls out drunk, and then it cuts back and everyone's kind of shocked, looking at Tyrion drunk. It's really funny.
That's hilarious.
Two Tyrions. I want to point out your point that you said you saw this GIF today on the internet, as if you could have seen this GIF on your local bulletin board or anywhere else.
You're right. Yeah.
Did you retweet the GIF, Yoke Boy? If people go to Radio Westeros, will they find it?
Yeah, it's on our feed on this website called Twitter. If anyone's heard of that.
Cool. So anyone who wants to see it, check that out.
Okay, about the scene, I thought that the suspense was really good. I don't know if you guys felt this, but there was a moment when I thought, is this white going to be alive still? I know we saw it moving on the boat, but there's that moment when you were like, hey, if the white's dead, this was all for nothing. And I thought that was really, really added to the scene.
I think they added some tension there. They actually, in that scene on the boat, they focused on the clasp on the crate, and then they had this sort of significant interplay with Sandor and the guard who was supposed to be guarding the crate. And then he brings the crate over, and I just kept thinking, what was that all about? Maybe the thing escaped. Maybe the guard opened it, and the white is now roaming King's Landing, and they're all going to look like fools. But
yeah,
whatever.
It was part of, now, as we're thinking about the scene, it's important to remember that Cersei has planned to accept the armistice and backstab them before the armistice even began. That's why Euron had his stuff all prepared. This is very clear. So Cersei's terror, it worked well for her that she was legitimately terrified because it sold the later lies.
Yeah, I was wondering how much Cersei talked to Euron beforehand and told him to just come up with a reason to pretend you're not getting involved. Just whatever happens, that's what you say. Because he came up with a very good one that is very believable that you want to get away from that thing. But clearly she wasn't able to prep him to have that answer ready. She didn't know it was coming.
Yeah, exactly. And Cersei also, it also has the effect of making Cersei look weaker because she just loses a major ally right in front of everybody. So it really sells that her position is weakened too when it actually isn't.
Yeah.
And so when she later says, okay, I'll fight with you guys, it's more believable that she would, because it looks like she's backed into a bigger corner than she really is.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's made more believable by the fact that he had just been made to look like a buffoon by Tyrion and Theon.
That's true. Yeah, their argument was also probably staged. Like, they were like, yeah, get up there and cause a commotion. I'll tell you to shut up. And that way they'll think that there's already a little rift between us, and it sells what comes after that. So I think that was actually really clever, the way they wrote the scene to make Euron walk away. Because I think, really, if you rewatch it, you're like, oh, of course Euron's lying. But in the moment, it was a lot harder to pick that out.
Which is part of why, when I talked earlier about this was an episode where knowing some of the spoilers for things really changed my perspective, I think, because some of it seemed so obvious to me. Cersei smirking there, I'm like, she's not doing anything with them. But I knew that in advance.
Yeah.
So we got a super chat from Acre Frey.
Oh, cool.
Do you guys think the Night King was watching the parlay through the white due to the blue eyes? This is something that Aziz and Sean talked a bit about on Monday. I don't think we'll go too into it except to see if Lady Gwyn and Yolkboy think it's possible or agree. I was thinking that clearly one white didn't get destroyed when they killed the White Walker, so they clearly put a white in a group with the rest that isn't by the same White Walker. It would make sense, I think, for all of them to have a white created by the Night King, because he's unlikely to get destroyed. But I think it is possible that there's someone above that White Walker, like that White Walker was third, general, and someone else is above, and so maybe there's a White Walker that looks through the eyes and tells the Night King what's up. But probably it's the Night King. I think he would be seeing this.
I think so too. But also, before you guys jump in, I want to add one more thing, which is that it added something to. We had a discussion earlier about how active the dead are, like how much they can respond to stimulus on their own. Like, because we talked about how Sandor goaded that one into attacking at the frozen lake. Well, this one's clearly not under direct control of any walker. Like, they're not guiding its movement. It was just it was like, I'm angry. You're knocking on my box. The White Walker didn't like. Okay, get really angry now. It's not like commanding him to do that. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. So it shows you a little more about how independent they are, which is kind of neat.
But then we also have, obviously, the differences in whites. Because, we have Gregor there, and he's basically, it seems like a slave. He just does whatever they say. And even to the point where Sean was theorizing about Gregor, doing something of his own, clashing with Cersei in some way. And I think, I don't think we got to this, but you had some thoughts on this white action, Lady Gwyn. With Qyburn, is that right? Or
That's Yolkboy's thoughts, I think.
Oh, Yolkboy, my bad. Oops.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I hadn't really given it any consideration that, that they could see through the whites. They didn't really allude to it in the TV show, but that as a mechanism, I would think that, the Night King could have this kind of power over people. And I wonder what he thought of Robert Strong. I wonder if he thought, that's good work. Whose handiwork?
Well done. Yeah, just from one necromancer to another. Good job.
Great job. Yeah, he's a big one. Wow, what a boy. I think that Qyburn probably wanted to take that white home. He was probably a bit disappointed. They burnt it. He was probably wanting to say no.
Yeah, can I keep that hand, please?
Yeah, will the hand work even if you burn the rest of the white? I don't know.
He's probably the character, funnily enough, all joking aside, that could, facilitate taking down the Night King, because he probably understands the magic, but he's just probably not interested. Qyburn would probably like to see all hell break loose. He's probably quite happy with what's going on.
Yeah. We had a super chat?
Yes, we do have a super chat. You can scroll down in General Z's because we're past this stuff because my mouse is slow.
Okay, we have...
From Elon Stiritz. You people are my heroes. Do we know when the first three-eyed raven was created? And if so, does that limit how far back Bran can see in the past? No, and no, I don't think either.
It would have to be, past the traditional point at which the Long Night came, because... if the timeline is even close to accurate that we're given from myth and legend, then the White Walkers came out during the Long Night, or because of the Long Night, or alongside it. And at that point, there wouldn't have been first men that were close to the children, who were learning from them. It was before, I would think that maybe after the Pact is when this sort of thing started to
See,
develop.
the thing is that I'm not sure about is whether Bran needs. Like, I think he could maybe see further back than when there was a three-eyed raven, because we see the creation of Night King, which is presumably when there wasn't a three-eyed raven, and all he really needs, I think, is a werewood.
Yeah. And he doesn't even always need a werewood, apparently. I mean, he looked back at Rhaegar Lyanna, just sitting there by the fire. And
it's not clear to me whether he was seeing Jon and Dany, or if that was just interspersed, or whether he was seeing anything there. I don't think he was, but they're out in the sea.
And that's book canon. Bloodraven does tell Bran that in time you'll be able to look anywhere. You won't need the werewoods. It's just a matter of his powers growing. So him being by the fire versus being by the werewood for something like that doesn't really make a big difference. Did you guys have any takes on that?
No, I would have just reiterated what you said about Bloodraven saying that in time you can see beyond the tree, which now in hindsight allows Bran to be mobile, doesn't he? As a character. He allows him to leave the cave and retain his powers. So from a plot point of view, you understand that.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. Because that's certainly a thing that people are wondering about. Bran leaving the cave was a small surprise for people, especially given the circumstances with Hodor's death and everything. That made the whole thing a lot more shocking. A lot of book people, self-included, strongly entertained the theory that Bran would never leave Bloodraven's cave. But now, I doubt that the showrunners made all that up. So I'm guessing Bran's going to end up in south of the Wall.
I think the convergence of the Starks just made too much sense. The way they came together, they all three of them had a new skill, and they had to refamiliarize and get to know each other. I think that smacks of classic storytelling. Lady Gwyn's been telling me this for years. So,
so if we're back to the meeting in the Dragon Pit now, Cersei's plan. Oh, we had something else?
I thought we talked about that. I'm sorry.
No, we didn't. The part about asking Jon to kneel. This is also really important to consider in the light of Cersei planning to betray them all along. If she could get Jon, who she knows is a guy who doesn't break oaths, to agree to not attack Cersei, then that really fits into her plan really well. Because then she can go do what she wants, and hey, Jon's made a promise that he has to keep. Even though Cersei broke her promise, Jon won't break his just because Cersei broke hers. Unless Cersei attacks Jon. Like, if she were to attack him, he would, that's a fair cop. But if she just goes attacking the South, and Jon agreed to not fight her, then he would hold to that, as much as he would hate it. So that was kind of clever of Cersei. It just didn't work out because he had already pledged himself to Dany. And that was kind of why she got frustrated and walked off and maybe, demanded more. So it's important to think of it in that light. And then, so she walks off. Brienne and Jaime have their moment where Brienne says something that's very shocking for her, F loyalty. And Jaime still at this point is, being led by the nose. He's still, like Olenna said, has lost control of the situation. And he's like, yeah, what am I supposed to do about it? He says, and tell her what? So, Lady Gwen, what's your take on all this?
Well, it has to do with the whole Brienne and Jaime and Cersei triangle. In Dance with Dragons, what Cersei has, actually is just going back to Feast, where Cersei has sent for Jaime while she's imprisoned. She's received no reply from him whatsoever, and we could probably in a couple minutes talk about his lack of reply. But when she's told that he's gone off with someone, she's kind of mystified. She says, a woman? What woman? Where did they go? No one knows. We've had no further word of him. The woman may have been the Evenstar's daughter, Lady Brienne. And then it's kind of just left at that. I think that's while she's in prison. And then when she's back at the Red Keep, see, I said it right that time. She thinks Jaime's sword hand was gone, and so was he, vanished with the woman Brienne somewhere in the Riverland. So she's still kind of mystified as to why Jaime has wandered off with this woman that she doesn't know much about, except that she thinks she's a great big ugly shambling creature, I think is the way the quote goes.
Yes, of course Cersei would judge her like that. Yeah,
exactly. Yes.
Our co-writer Joe Buckley suggests that this was a bit like Tormund and Jon. Tormund planted the seed in Jon's head about pride and kneeling, and that ended up playing out. And just like this moment, Brienne plants the seed in Jaime about what really matters about loyalty. And then that ends up, well, in a sense, loyalty. In this case, Brienne or Jaime's loyalty goes to, the living instead of his family. But still, it's certainly a thing about loyalty and where you prioritize.
Mm-hmm. We got a super chat from Michelle Carey. Comment on sanguinicity. Dany and Jon are actually closer genetically than normal aunt and nephew because of the inbreeding in the Targ family tree.
That's a good point.
Correct. Yes.
That is a good point. That is a very good point. Yes, Rhaegar's line had several, generations in a row of inbreeding without pause. Like, there are a lot of non-Targaryens in the Targ family tree, but starting with Aegon V, everyone after Aegon V was an incest marriage for like 4 generations.
That said, it's not like the characters in World will know that their aunt-nephew relationship is grosser than another one.
Yes.
They don't know those.
They don't have all the science backing up these arguments here. Yeah. But that is a good point that I don't think any of us even considered, and we have considered the closeness of the bloodline. So good catch there. Thanks from Australia there, Michelle. All right. So Tyrion and Cersei's meeting. This one is fraught with controversy and theorizing. There's a lot of unknown here because of how the scene ends. It ends kind of abruptly, and there's a lot of theorizing what happens after.
There is.
But let's start at the beginning. Tyrion loved her children. That's a really, his nephews and niece.
He
Well,
he loved his nephew and niece, not his nephews.
He only loved one of them, yes.
Plural there. But I think Cersei does know the truth of this. And I mean, it's not like Tyrion claims he loves Joffrey either. He said he's talking about Tommen and Myrcella, and she knows. She can see how many afternoons he spent with them, talking to them, and trying to protect them and all that.
And Cersei's arguments were interesting. Tyrion made some of the same arguments he made to Jaime. He said, look, it was him or me. Our father was going to kill me, even though he knew I was innocent. What is up with that? Cersei's like, it doesn't matter. You killing him is wrecked our family. It was too much of a blow. It's the reason Tommen and Myrcella died. It doesn't matter if it wasn't justified, because the bottom line is that my kids are dead because of it. And that's a very interesting point of view. And
I think it's not just that. It's the bottom line. My kids are dead, and our house seems doomed.
Yeah. And she blames that on Tyrion. And whether or not it's right to blame Tyrion for that, it's a strong point, and it kind of reveals her thoughts on the matter, and it fits her character, I think, being very hardline about it, being very bottom line about it. Not the whys and the whats don't matter, it's the bottom lines that matter. And Cersei, that to me is very fitting for her character. So Lady Gwen, give us your thoughts here, because Tyrion would know that this child is Jaime's. So that really has a big effect. And one of the big theories here is that some sort of arrangement was made, perhaps involving that child. So let's get your thoughts first. This is a big one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not surprising, coming so close to that discussion about Tommen and Myrcella and this pregnancy reveal, that people would wonder what Tyrion's reaction was in the part that plays out off camera. What was said, if there was some sort of secret bargaining or deal or betrayal or whatnot going on. I tend to think that Cersei played Tyrion just as much as she played Jaime, because I think Cersei's for Cersei.
I totally agree. That was theater. She was just. But the thing is, it was theater because she wanted to get something more out of them. She's like, well, I'm going to end up agreeing to this because that's how I'm going to fool them all. I'm going to agree to this deal. But she got to act like she was aggrieved at Jon's, not kneeling, because she was kind of counting on that, and that part fell through. So still, even if it wasn't, the big popular theory is that Tyrion told Cersei that since Dany can't have kids, that Jaime and Cersei's kid could be the heir to both kingdoms. Yeah. There's a lot of problems with that theory, though. I absolutely think it's possible. The problems with the theory are, well, there's a lot of them. One, this would mean that Tyrion outed Dany's inability to have kids. Yeah, that is not public knowledge.
No, and that's something that Cersei would use in a propaganda campaign easily.
Yeah. So that's a big part of this that's hard to swallow. Second of all, it's just fraught with peril. Both sides would know that this kid is no sure thing from being, making it to birth and surviving the cradle. This is Westeros, after all. This is a pre-First World Society where infants die frequently, even ones with, royal kids with great medical care, relatively great medical care. So I'm not really sure what to think, because I don't really buy this arrangement of Tyrion saying that the heir, because first of all, Tyrion doesn't have that authority either. Daenerys would never go for that, especially not, after the fact. She'd be furious if Tyrion made this arrangement without her knowledge, and Cersei would know that Tyrion doesn't have that authority. So on one hand, he had to offer something, or he had to say something more to get her to come back out, even though she was going to come back out anyway. So it's confusing, but I'm still down on he's giving, naming that child heir. Do you guys have any other thoughts on this? Any other ways this could play out, or any just takes on this situation in general? Because it's one of the things we've gotten the most questions about.
No, I don't actually.
So are we presuming that? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Were we presuming that Tyrion would be promised Casterly Rock in this scenario?
I guess there would be some extension of that. If it's this is part of why it's confusing, because there's multiple possibilities. There's possibility that Tyrion didn't betray Dany other than revealing her inability to have kids. Agreeing for that kid to be the heir to both kingdoms isn't necessarily a betrayal. It might just be a sensible solution, a compromise.
Like you said, lie.
But it could be a full turn where he's like, okay, I'm back with House Lannister. I need something, Casterly Rock can be that something. So there's multiple, like it could be a part of a backhanded move by Tyrion, or it could be a full betrayal. And it's really unclear which. I really have a hard time thinking it's a full betrayal, though, because Tyrion was very adamant with everybody. He's like, yeah, of course Cersei's going to betray us all. Before the meeting, he was very clear about that in episode 6, which was kind of a relief for all of us to hear that. He's like, why is Tyrion trusting Cersei? Well, he doesn't. So how is he going to trust her to fulfill this?
What I was going to say is I'm down on the idea that there was any backdoor planning here at all.
Yeah, there had to be something for Cersei to come back out. But it doesn't have to be something this big. It could be something smaller. Yeah, I don't know.
For her to come back out?
She was like, I'm not doing the deal.
Yeah,
and then she came back out and said, I will do the deal.
I think her plan is to try to convince them. She has to make it be convincing.
Oh no, I agree. But there has to be a convincing reason for her to come back out. What changed her mind? Because to everybody else was sitting there, she told Tyrion, "I'm not coming back out."
I think she thought about. I think the point is that she had this conversation with Tyrion. They got personal for a minute. Cersei thought about the realities of things, and that's what she didn't really, but that's what she wants them to think.
Yeah.
All she needed was time. She didn't need a concrete reason. I think she just needed time because she couldn't just do it right away.
Yeah.
So okay. I don't think anything had to have happened.
It could be that simple. Yeah, I agree. That's a possibility. It could be anywhere from that simple to some sort of secret deal to a full betrayal to anything.
Super chat from Meredith Glassberg. By letting him know she's pregnant, Cersei's giving Tyrion some things to leverage in negotiations.
Yeah, basically that's, because behind the this is an important detail. The behind the episode reveals that Cersei conned Tyrion with the pregnancy thing. He thought that he figured it out, but she intentionally touched her belly to telegraph that so that he would figure it out, to think that he figured out something that she was actually intending to communicate.
And I think that's smart for a few reasons, but one, I think it knowing that she has a baby means he's more likely to believe that she's softened towards things, and it means that he's more likely to soften towards her and deal with her a little more kindly.
Yes, I agree. So everything makes sense in the context of Cersei stalling, or maybe to try to get a better deal out of everything, but the better deal isn't necessary, because all she really wants is for all those other armies to go north and get busy so she can do her thing while they're busy. And as far as everything looks, that is going to happen. Cersei's plan is going to at least work early on. Okay. Let us do some mid-roll shout-outs, and then we'll talk about the after meeting and the rest of the episode. So let's see. It is time for our Ironborn shout-outs this time. We got a couple of new ones in there. Thanks to our Ironborn captains. Leading off is Kathleen the Ruthless, captain of the Night Terror. Their motto, don't fall asleep. Black Matos Stormrider, captain of the Rusted Hinge. Rebea, Lady of Waves, is captain of the Iron Shadowcat. Tusk Shield, Breaker captain of Kraken's Fury. Oisian the Wanderer is captain of Naga's Living Flame. Sir Selvus Redblade of White Harbor is captain of Trident of the North. Lord Chucklaws is captain of the Drummond Nightblood, destroyer of evil. Mad Zack is captain of the Red Wake. Heron Burntbeard is captain of Smoking Narwhal. John Gregor is captain of the Fist of the Drowned God. Kari's Farwind is called Steel Speaker, Oracle of Lonely Night. Lonely Light, that is, sorry. And the motto is The Eyes in the Waves. Sir Chiaran of Lonely Light is, that's Chiron of Lonely Light, Scourge of the Sunset Sea, captain of Naga's Breath, a Droman armed with siphons of wildfire. And finally, Eileen, Archer Queen, captain of the Border Collie. That's pretty cool. We also have our Blood Riders, who deserve their shout out as well. That is Koholkoi, master of the bow called Sun Piercer, Vorsaki, wielder of a Valyrian steel arak with a dragon bone hilt, and Stefania, first named Kalaki, Blood Rider, wielder of the Orvik Ki Vorsa, which means Whip of Fire in Dothraki. And also thanks to Casey of House Chickawawa from Tormund's Giant's Wang, our love is forever. Right on, right on. Now, again, this season has been full of references to the books, and with so much happening and so much referring to the past, it's easy to get book and show canon crossed over. And with so much time between now and the next season, and who knows when The Winds of Winter will be out, I highly recommend a reread. It's always a great thing to do after the season to kind of get everything straight again. And for that, I recommend audible.com. 2 free downloads with the trial, and that trial is free. So you can keep the trial. If you like it, start getting the rest of the books on Audible because you get free ones with your subscription. But if you don't like it, just keep the 2 free books and be done with it. You know, you don't have to spend any money. Go to historyofwesteros.com. The audible.com links are over there on the right. And if that's a fit for you, great, because it really is for me. I was listening to The World of Ice and Fire today on Audible. So there you go. All right. Let us move on. How about King's Landing post the meeting? This is Jaime and Cersei. So, God, Cersei's just so rude here. Like, you're the stupidest Lannister. She's like basically like proud of herself for doing such a good job on tricking everybody, but then acting like Jaime's an idiot for not figuring it out, even though she did such a good job tricking everybody.
That's hilarious.
So he had no idea, clearly. He's like, what? He was totally flummoxed by this turnaround. And obviously his generals were too. They obviously didn't know. So, but a key thing here is that Cersei didn't even trust him with this. He was really upset that he, as the commander of his armies, was not in on this plan, this side deal with Euron, like they conspired, and didn't include him in it. So that goes to show the declining level of trust between them. And that was a big part of what comes shortly after.
What does he expect? He spoke with Tyrion. Tyrion! What are you thinking, Jaime?
And Bronn, Jerome Flynn. You spoke with Jerome Flynn.
Yeah, we know he's
the real problem.
So, Lady Gwen, give us your take here.
Well, I think you're right that's just a huge overstep, or on her part, to not consult with the commander of her army about these sorts of, and Jaime, for everything that they've been to each other. She begs, I mentioned this earlier, she begs Jaime in A Feast for Crows to come to King's Landing to help her when she's in prison. And this is it. This is where we finally got to this moment that we've all been waiting for. In A Feast for Crows, here is the line of Jaime replying to Cersei's letter, which is quite impassioned. Just basically says, I love you, I need you, hurry. And that's pretty much what it says over and over again. His reply was, Jaime rolled the parchment up again as tight as one hand would allow and handed it to Peck. No, he said, put this in the fire.
Ooh. And awesomely, even though the show and book very much diverged on a lot of Jaime and Cersei, this moment has one similar feature, which is that when Jaime throws this letter in the fire versus when he rides off. In both cases, snow is just starting to fall in the south here, or it's at least in these scenes. Jaime is snowing in the Riverlands for him, and here it's snowing in King's Landing. Yoke Boy, what's your take?
Yeah, touch wood, it does appear that Book Jaime is back, which, you know, some people are going to be very happy about this. We would all pretty much given up, but Book Jaime looks like he's back. He's finally had enough of Cersei. Jaime and Brienne fans especially will be delighted. The thought of these two, you know, possibly fighting together, teaming up somewhere, that's a really exciting thought, isn't it? You know, those two, you know, on a battlefield against the dead, fighting for the survival of mankind. I think that's really exciting. It might be notable that Cersei, who is easily the meanest of the three siblings, was in fact unable to kill either of her siblings. So, you know, maybe there, like we've been discussing, maybe there is a little statement about the Lannisters, you know, who they really are underneath.
Did you guys think that the Mountain was going to kill Jaime there? How much tension did you feel?
I was actually worried.
I was too. Like doing that twice, like since it already happened with Tyrion, I was like, ooh, I don't know if they're gonna just do this. It was a good twist, a good setup, because it really felt like it could really happen.
I thought. No, I was gonna say I thought she just would be more likely to be that angry at Jaime. You know, but their love was that much greater that the betrayal would be that much more. Because
killing Tyrion ruins her whole plan. That ruins her plan of laying low while everyone goes north and then backstabbing them. That if you just kill the hand of the queen, like, so much for that, you know. But killing Jaime is just, that doesn't, the Northerners don't care about that. They'll be like, really?
And in fact, that keeps Jaime from outing her plan to them, because that's where he's going.
He knows about Euron,
So there's that. But I will say, Cersei was nice enough not to kill her brother, and he still abandoned his children, his child. He had already been an absent father for Joffrey, Tommen, Marcella, and now whatever this little baby is.
I don't think he sees himself as abandoning her permanently, you know what I mean? No, I know you're just joking, but it's like he might, I think in his mind, he can reconcile with Cersei later.
Yeah, I agree. I would agree with that.
But we'll see about that. Now, a good catch that was made by one of our...
point right here from Bernadette the Burt. Jaime has to go north and face Bran.
Oh!
Great catch. I didn't even think about that.
I mean, this is why I said that if we were just to talk about Jaime going north, we could fill an entire episode. So this is why we're going to have plenty to talk about in the off-season. I didn't even think of that. Jaime Bran, like,
one of the things we're going to talk about in our next episode next week, where we talk a little bit about some of the things leading up to season 8, is that there was that preliminary outline for season 7 that was leaked through the HBO hack, in addition to all the leaks in general, and that has some really interesting differences that we're going to talk about. And one of them is that Jaime takes an army north.
Yeah.
In the actual preliminary outline.
Oh, wow.
And he changed it. I mean, one is, how is he able to get this done? It causes all this conflict. I was surprised in the episode for him not to have an army with him, though.
At least not even a Bronn.
Yeah, he does have a black horse,
He does. That's what I was going to say before you said that. Yeah, a black horse. That's the first time we've ever seen him on a black horse, I believe. It might be the first time he wore a black cape, but he did have... You see, lady, when I see you say you did find an example of him wearing a black cape?
Yes, because this is something that, for whatever reason... it's been, tossed around as significant in some way. He's dressed in red and black at the Winterfell feast early in the Game of Thrones.
Oh.
I don't know if it's significant. It could just be just an early sort of, description, but he's wearing crimson silk, black boots, and a black satin cloak. A lot of people find that interesting because it's Targaryen colors. But there you go. I think it's interesting because so many in this particular season, we've seen so many characters' wardrobes turn into this kind of black theme, and they're all going to the wall. So
yeah, that is interesting. We've got a super chat from Roberta Mitchell. Thank you. I don't see any questions, so feel free to put that in the chat, and I'll try to keep my eye out for it, Roberta. Thanks. And we've also got another super chat from Eric Harry. I don't know if you guys have gotten this question yet, but could Euron be like Admiral Aurane Waters and take the money and run?
Well, it's possible. The thing is, we don't know that he actually has the money. Like, the Iron Bank, for all we know, the Iron Bank is paying the Golden Company directly, or that they're not being paid till they get there. There's no reason to assume Euron has the cash to pay them. You know, that it's possible. But we can't assume that. But yeah, it's possible. I really wonder how that would affect the greater plot if Euron just goes rogue like that. But would he have the Golden Company fighting for him? I guess. I mean, I don't know. It's really kind of curious, this whole the possibility here. And in fact, this was our next thing to talk about. Euron going to Essos. This is a timely super chat.
That's why I put it right there.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
You had thank you. You have a good take here.
Yes,
something we're going to get
we
hyped
have
about.
Euron going to Essos to get the Golden Company with their elephants. I just have to like underline that like 3 times. Elephants, like talk about, that's a great way to add some unique visual elements to season 8, I think, is to have that. But my other question is, what else could come of him going to Essos? Is it possible that he could, you know, acquire some of those artifacts that he has in the books? He has Valyrian steel armor, he has Dragonbinder, and if he has Dragonbinder, could it work on an undead dragon?
Yeah.
That's my question.
A lot of questions. A lot of good questions. And it makes sense that they would... I was wondering if the Golden Company ever be in the show, you know, and it was kind of like, maybe not, because they're cutting the whole Young Griff plot. But it also makes sense that it would be in the finale, in the final season, because, like you said, elephants, like... that adds a big chunk to the budget, because I imagine they're CGI elephants, or at least mostly CGI. And that's like you see that sort of stuff in big budget productions, like Lord of the Rings has elephants, you know, and things like that. So saving that for the big finale season makes a lot of sense. And I'm just happy we're getting the Golden Company, even though we might not get
the real Golden Company.
The real Golden Company. I imagine we'll get, you know, because they even gave Euron his single eye armor.
Yeah.
I bet we'll get their skulls and the motto, because why not? Why would they make new stuff up for this? Is go with what's already there.
That? Yeah, why ever?
Yeah, they do occasionally change the details, but it's usually they don't. You know, usually they keep the basic details in place. And since Jaime isn't around, Cersei has no military commanders. That gives us some hope for Golden Company characters to, like, at least to interact with Cersei, to talk about what the plan should be, this and that, because normally all that was filtered through Jaime, all this command stuff. But now it's not going to, like, go through Qyburn, I don't think. So maybe we'll get a you know, what's his face? Who was the one that died? Miles Blackheart or something like that. Even though he's been dead for a while in the books. It would be a real kick in the butt if it's actually John Connington. I really don't think it will be, but man, that would be a surprise. Even bigger surprise if it's young Griff.
What if Theon fucks up the whole plan with his, you know, interception of Euron or whatever the hell he's doing? I guess we'd talk about that later, but you know, the elephant in the room with this elephant in the room, hey? The elephant in the room with this plan is that Euron might not even have to run away to ruin this mission. It could be down to a move from Theon.
Yeah,
Theon can ruin it, but so can Jaime.
And I'm still wondering about Jorah. I mean, we know Jorah served in the Golden Company, and I wonder what connections he has. I'm expecting something to come of that. Yeah,
that's an easy one to forget, because Jorah didn't serve in the Golden Company in the books, but he mentions it offhand in, like, season 4 or something like that. It's a real...
Seems notable.
Yeah, it does now. At the time, it was like, that's a puzzling thing, but now it's like, ooh, that's important. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Euron also, this has the other impact of Jaime running off. Euron can maybe push even harder for the marriage. And Cersei may have less reason to hold him at arm's length. You know, if she's got the Golden Company under her control, Iron Bank, and she's got her enemies where she wants them. I don't know. Euron, she can still hold Euron off, but he'll push harder, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. But could he go for Dany instead? Maybe he wants to switch sides.
I mean, I think it seems clear to me watching it, the lines that he says about the Queen and all of these things, that he's just vague enough that it is referencing Dany, I think.
And he made his most beautiful woman in the world comment.
Yeah, he made that, and he was talking about Dany, you know, ultimately, I think. So I think we will see him make overtures to her, but I don't know how successful that will be, but maybe more successful if he's able to get the Golden Company involved with her.
Yeah. All right, so we can move on from that. We'll obviously have, this is another topic that we will absolutely come back to during the off season, because there's so many possibilities, and surely we haven't considered them all yet. And as more ideas come, we'll start to present them maybe in more of a formal fashion. All right, so let's talk about the snow falling on King's Landing, and we'll start with you, Lady Gwyn.
Well, you mentioned this. I think it was a great callback to the books, which was one of the. There were a handful of things in this episode that really made me kind of cheer out loud. And when I saw that snow falling, it reminded me of that moment in A Feast for Crows when it's snowing in the Riverlands, when he gets and burns that letter from Cersei. It says when morning broke, the snow was ankle deep and deeper in the Godswood, where drift had piled up under the trees. And when he's looking at the letter, it says how a snowflake landed on the letter, and that just those snowflakes kind of in the air around him really brought me back to that moment. So.
Yeah, the snowflake landing on the letter was very much like the snowflake landing on his glove. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yes.
Cool little bit of connective tissue between book and show.
Mm-hmm.
And Yoke Boy, you had a take here as well.
I did. I don't know if I'm the only one that thought this, but like it had really delicate music, slowed down delicate music over kind of choral, vocal kind of hymn music. And it really reminded me of Christmas. I thought, this is like, I wouldn't mind watching Home Alone after this.
Joe Buckley points out that to him it was almost like a Disney film, the snow on King's Landing. It's a beautiful, enchanting shot, but we know that it's anything but underneath, So that's pretty cool, very cool. Let's go to Dragonstone. This was kind of curious because this was a bit of a missed prediction here. I thought that these scenes would come before the King's Landing meeting because, I used logic that doesn't really apply on the show, which is they would be passing Dragonstone on their way to King's Landing, so they'll stop there first. Nah.
One of the harshest diseases ever been. I used logic. Is that what you meant? It's just out of context. I used logic that they wouldn't have used on the show.
But they actually did stop at Dragonstone because that's how where all the house at Missandei joined the group and all that. But they just didn't have scenes there. Yeah, that's me being harsh. My version of it. But we had a great moment here, and despite all this, it was still this Jon Theon scene was pretty strong. Stark plus and Greyjoy equals Stark and Targaryen. Jon was kind of talking to Theon, but he was also kind of talking to himself unknowingly, And this is some sort of Lady Dustin stuff that got in here, didn't it? With the identity.
On Monday's stream, Aziz did this whole thing. So now look, I'm Jon, and right here, Targaryen with a Stark on top. Get it?
Oh,
that's all I wanted to do. But he did the one with the Greyjoy too before.
Gotta wear many different hats. So yeah, Lady Gwyn, tell us what you thought about this.
Yeah, well, you just mentioned Lady Dustin. When Theon goes down into the crypts at Winterfell with Barbie Dustin in A Dance with Dragons, she kind of calls him out. Here he is thinking all the things that he's done, pretending to kill Bran and Rickon, taking Winterfell, burning it. It's probably indicative of him hating the Starks, right? But she nails it right on and says, why do you love the Starks? And his answer is just, I wanted to be one of them. And so, this scene with him and Jon really brought me back to that. And I love the fact that Jon was able to, kind of absolve him as much as he could for that struggle that he's had internally for so long.
It was great to see, wasn't it? I thought this was a really huge moment for Jon and Theon, and one of the human moments I was talking about earlier. I thought that Jon not only solves Theon's long-standing cognitive dissonance regarding his identity, but Jon also unknowingly resolves his own upcoming dilemma about Stark versus Targaryen, and the answer's there for him. It came out of his mouth. He can be a Stark and a Targaryen. So for me, it was one of the best scenes of the episode, and it was just as much about RLJ as about Theon. So I thought it was actually quite clever writing there.
Yeah, and they didn't rush through it either. A lot of these connections, these reunions, these moments, we're happy we get them, but we wish they were a little longer. This one was not cut short. This one was like thorough and full, and it wasn't like they rushed past all the points. So that made it extra good. And it's also touches on Jon's kind of recurring theme of forgiveness. Jon will forgive anyone as long as they're not impeding the Great War's progress. So like, Ollie, sorry, you're dead, but doesn't matter what Theon did because he's on the right side now. And that's just, but Jon is very much looking at the bottom line here. He's like, look, if you're helping with the Great War, I don't care what you did.
He's still not quite as nice to him as maybe he was to Jorah, who did something poor as well.
I agree.
For example, he says, there's this great talk they have about wanting to do the right thing, and Jon obviously feels like he's made a lot of mistakes over the years. So I think he could relate to that. And so Jon says, Jon says, I've done plenty of things I regret. Not compared to me, you haven't, says Theon. And Jon just goes very flatly, no, I haven't. That's the truth. I definitely have not screwed up as badly as you have, Theon, and I've been killed.
Jon is honest. Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm forgiving you, but I'm not going to lie to you. It's one thing that is very consistent about him, that's for sure. So yeah, also it was a great shot. Like those two standing alone in that huge cavernous Dragonstone throne room is just really cool because they always take the opportunity to show it, from a backdrop, and it's just great. I love that spot. So, like Jon says, what are you standing here talking to me for? If this is what you need to do, then go do it.
He said that, I was like, in my mind, Theon was approaching Jon because he kind of wanted help. That was what I thought about the situation, that he was trying to get some people to contribute some men or some resources or advice or anything. And Jon just says, well, what are you waiting for? Just go do it. And I was like, it's hard for me to imagine Theon having much success with the few Ironborn he has.
Yeah, well, it's funny, like
20 good men, yeah. Yeah, so that's what
yeah, you caught that too, huh?
Did you count how many there were, Yoke Boy?
Yeah, I did. That's what I was going to count them on the screen because it does seem like 20 good men come again, doesn't it?
It almost seems kind of silly for them to go to sail the Iron Islands with 20 men expecting to do something. But when they get there, they're like, wait, Euron's not here. Euron's in Essos. Oh, what great timing we have. Unless Yara's not there, then it's not so great.
Yeah.
But that's pretty funny. They're like, oh, we're going to go face all this. Wait, there's no one here. It'll still count as brave. See, Theon's going to get to have done a brave deed without actually having to do the brave deed.
Yeah, I was wondering, we were talking about whether Yara would be a Pike, and I think one point in the favor of her being on Pike is that we've had Pike in the opening credits all season. It could just be because we had this Greyjoy presence, but I expect we will see Pike again, and so they might be then. But I had a couple other thoughts on this scene in particular. One, wouldn't this kick from Herrig, that's that Ironborn guy who's really salty.
Hey.
Wouldn't that still hurt an old wound? Like, it wasn't that many years ago that Theon would have had this happen. I maybe not that long ago.
I don't know.
Clearly it didn't. It was my thought that just because it's gone doesn't mean there's not some sensitive area.
Might be clever writing there because there's no who's around to verify whether this is accurate or not. Like, do we know anyone that have lost both cock and balls that can vouch for how much it hurts to get kneed there when you don't have?
With medieval medical care. I don't know. But on a more serious point, I thought that Theon washing the blood from his face right there in the salt water was a very Ironborn moment. Yeah. This baptism, this, moment that he had where he's finally back to himself. Maybe.
Yeah, sort of like a washing. Yeah.
I expect we will see more of Theon and PTSD and war and all that. I don't expect it to just went away or anything.
Yeah, and I'm glad they found a way to tie Yara's rescue. Apparently, I mean, if he goes there and finds that Euron's gone, then if Jaime hasn't already told people, or if they don't trust Jaime, then he can be the one to out this part of the plan. Because Cersei's betrayal is perhaps expected, but Euron's part of this is not as clear in terms of the North, Dany and Jon's team. They don't necessarily know about Euron, at least not yet. So. Because on its own, Theon going to rescue his sister when there's like the Great War and all these huge epic things happening seems kind of small potatoes. So, yeah, but I'm glad they found a way to tie that into the bigger picture. So we'll have to see how that goes. Mm-hmm. All right. How about Jon and Dany?
Very major scene here.
Very, very major. With obviously, it was one of those things that no one that I know was remotely surprised that this happened, but it was not necessarily a sure thing, especially not a sure thing this season. Kind of makes sense that it would happen, during the finale, but same.
This was led up to by this conversation that Jon and Dany had at the Dragon Pit, where they're talking about whether Dany can have children or not, and at least Jon is reasonable, and he's questioning whether a witch is a reliable source. I was like, yeah, Jon.
I know.
It's the most I've liked him in a long time. I really appreciated that. But something else that's notable that I didn't actually realize myself, Adam Whitehead, from Atlas of Ice and Fire and all that, he pointed out that Miri never says the children or womb part of the prophecy in the show. Back when that happened, I went back and watched the scene, and she just doesn't say it. Of course, Dany said that she said it, so we have to assume that she said it off screen, but that also means we can't know exactly what the words were. It's an awkward thing for anything to happen off screen like that.
Yeah, it's a weird continuity error, but it's still canon because Dany says that it was said. It's awkward. We have to assume it happened off screen, even though the prophecy was said while we were all watching. So maybe it was just we can assume that she said it was for a different reason. Maybe it wasn't prophecy related. She could say, "Oh, you give bear a child like that, a monstrous baby, then you're not going to have any more kids after that." That maybe it's more of a scientific quote reason. Either way, it's awkward, and that's being nice. But still, this is what we have, and she believes it to be true. It may or may not be true. It's being brought up. Jon's questioning it, so it's still a thing. But it's just kind of hard to figure because it's so presented so awkwardly.
The sex scene between Dany and Jon, I'll tell you, I promised one person I was going to have an image of it, but then I realized I didn't want us to get flagged for having anything inappropriate at all. But
that's true.
Two notable things about it to me are, one is that Dany isn't sexualized at all. We see Jon nude, but not Dany really much at all. And two is that it's really, it's very focused on their faces and this emotion passing their face. And I thought Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke did a pretty great job there. As awkward as to me, the sex scene seemed like they were awkward and dead fish and whatever. It didn't seem super passionate or great, but they seemed like they cared about each other.
yeah they like Jon Kit Harington said behind the scenes that they knew this was going to be a mistake, but they both couldn't. It was like a runaway train. They were into each other, and that was that. And they also both had hilarious reactions, like, "What is your thoughts?" And they both made the gagging like which is really funny to think about. It's like Kit Harington is gagging over doing a nude scene with Emilia Clarke, and Emilia Clarke is gagging over doing a nude scene with Jon. So have they seen each other?
Aziz, what kind of gagging are you talking about?
Heyo. Yeah, nice. So we have a super chat. Let's get into
that later. We're going to that later.
Oh, okay, cool. Let's talk about Tyrion's watching. Now, there's a lead up to this. That is the conversation about whether Dany should fly to Winterfell or not. And there's a lot of subtle looks around the room. Jorah's like, "Nah, don't fly. Don't go by, carriage and boat. You got to fly there because a lot of people want to kill you." And Jorah's always being cautious, but he's not wrong here. But she listens to Jon. She takes Jon's advice. It was kind of maybe it would have been what she did anyway. But the point is, this sets up what one of the things Tyrion is worried about. Now, there's a lot of things Tyrion has concerns with when he sees them. But one of them is that a romance between these two could cause all kinds of problems. If it doesn't go well, they might hate each other. If it goes really well, in terms of them, then they may stop listening to other people as much. There may be too much bias. They may hold each other's advice over that of all their other counselors, which is kind of what those looks around the room were about. And they're like, "Uh-oh, she's kind of just listening to Jon here." But there's also other factors, like Tyrion maybe is jealous. In fact, that's likely that he was jealous. So to differentiate between a romance and a political marriage, Tyrion wants them maybe to hook up politically, to have a political alliance, maybe even a marriage. But a secret romance is not that. So it's really important to make that distinction. I see a lot of people who have asked us questions about this on Twitter and other places are not making that distinction. They're like, "Why isn't Tyrion happy that they're hooking up? He wanted this." No, he wants a succession. He wants marriages. He doesn't want this secret banging. That's not the same thing. So There's a lot to unpack here. What did you think, Yoke Boy? Let's start with you there.
I just, wonder about how it was portrayed. He was kind of watching outside the room. He was in the shadows. It was, while two people were having sex. And to me, it clearly conveys stalkery, weirdo behavior. And, I'm guessing a lot of people felt the same. But, the interview with the director, he didn't seem to agree. So I don't know what. To me, it was like, what is Tyrion doing? He's acting weird, man.
Yeah, I'll say I agree. I saw it as definitely a romantic tone to it, but that there's multiple reasons. You can be sad about the romance and also be worried about the state of, the monarchy or whatever. But I think there's some meta things that should be considered. You guys mentioned how the director disagreed, but there's a lot of other things that point towards this, towards Tyrion actually having interest in her. There's this quote from Peter Dinklage from the beginning of the season, which I think is maybe the most damning. He says, "We'll deal with how much Daenerys can trust him to stay on her side against the Lannisters, but he's smitten with his employer. How good can he be at his job while having these feelings?" I mean, Peter Dinklage said that right before season 7 came out, so that says something to me. And I think we talked about this preliminary outline for season 7 where a lot of things were changed, so we can't take that too seriously, but there were some interesting quotes that I grabbed. One is that the line where the section where he's viewing Dany and Jon's door and hearing the sounds, it says that he's troubled for more reasons than one. So, in quotes, more reasons than one. So clearly there's multiple things going on here. There were some scenes with Bronn that were cut, conversations that he had with Tyrion that they didn't actually film. And so he said this to Tyrion: "You're better off not wanting a girl like that, Daenerys. A girl like that is not manageable." And earlier he says to Tyrion, this is a quote from the outline: "Bronn looks over his shoulder at Jon Snow. Handsome brooder. Dragon Queen fucking him yet? No? Bet she will be soon. He's what they go for. Him and your brother. Not us. We're never the one they go for. We're the other one. It's sure shitty to be the other one." Bronn catches sight of Jorah. Tyrion tells Bronn who he is, reminding him that Jorah started out informing on Dany for Robert, and now he's just like you. Soon she'll have a string of you, following her around like baby ducks. And they did cut those scenes, but I think that that's pretty striking that they wrote that in the first place, and it tells me that we should be on the lookout for a potential romance here, or a potential conflict.
Definitely.
I also, just to put it into context, I know some people have talked about age differences for them, and I wanted to put this into context for everyone. The ages in the books and in the show for these 4 characters that we're talking about and romance. Jon is 17 in the books, then 20, aged up, he's now 22 at this point in the show. Dany was 16 and now 22. Tyrion in the books would be 27. He's 39 in the show, actually, and 48 in real life. So that's a quite a big jump.
Yeah. Jaime's the Lannister 3 are the most aged up of all.
So he's much older than Dany in the show than he is in the books. They're actually quite close. As close. 10 years is pretty close. Whereas Jorah is 46 in the books, and he might be as old as 56 in the show. So he's easily at least 30 years older than Daenerys, just for context for when people talk about these age differences. I wanted to find that out.
Yeah.
But anyways, more about this outline. I don't want to put too much basis on this because they cut things out. Like, for instance, in the preliminary outline, Brienne and Podrick go beyond the wall, and Brienne dies there. So, that's pretty different from what happens ultimately, so we can't put too much stock in this. And we also had some, minor little things like Olenna at the beginning of the season talking to Dany about her marrying a Tyrell male, which tells us there are still lots of Tyrell cousins, something we assumed. So, basically, this outline might tell us where Season 8 is going, so we're going to talk about it next week. But I don't know. I can't ignore these meta details when I'm looking at whether or not Tyrion thinks of Daenerys romantically. I think 100% he does. I don't know about you guys. If you guys feel strongly one way or the other, if you guys think this is a scrapped plot line, if you think there won't be a romantic conflict next season, or you think there will be,
I think that Tyrion. I think it's legit that Tyrion has feelings for Daenerys, but I also think he realizes that nothing will come of it. I don't think he's pining for her. I think he has feelings that he knows are not going to go anywhere, but they still are problematic for him to deal with because they're still strong feelings. But I don't think he's under any illusions about how that would go, or how it doesn't really make a lot of sense politically either. Do you guys have thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I don't think they've totally scrapped it. They may have stopped going full bore at it, but they've did some scenes where it was telegraphed that Tyrion had these feelings. The scene where she was talking about Jon being too little, and there was this kind of awkwardness, and I don't think they've totally given up on it. So
we had the foreign horror comment that Cersei makes about him being interested, and we even have this in previous seasons with him talking about Dario or Jorah or anything like that. Totally
agree. We had a comment from patron Gail Krieger who kind of says similar things to what I was saying. And again, I'm not saying this is the only thing. Like Peter Dinklage himself says, there's multiple things going on here. Anyone who says it's only one thing, if you're saying it's just the jealousy or it's just the politics, I think you're wrong. Because it's not, there's no reason to, first of all, we can't know that. You can't just take a look at Tyrion's face and make that kind of judgment. We don't know. So the safest guess is that it's multiple things, like Peter Dinklage says. Anyway, patron Gail Krieger says, suddenly, she is listening to and sleeping with Jon. It gives him considerable influence with her that others simply won't be able to compete with. I could be wrong, but I hate the idea of her small council being populated by the lovesick advisors. And then, like Bran kind of said in that deleted line, that is kind of sort of how it's going. And they all, can't speak honestly because they don't have, they have these feelings getting in the way. And, I guess that makes, maybe that makes Varys and Missandei back. Maybe she should be listening to them more. Bring them back into it.
Missandei's in love with Dany too.
Damn it! Everyone's in love with Dany. What do we do here? I tweeted this that I think kind of makes the problem for Tyrion in some ways a little clearer. Imagine the two most powerful people at your work, or the two people directly above you. Imagine them hooking up in secret, and you're the only one who knows about it. Would you not get a very bad feeling about how work might go from that point on if this is happening? You could just imagine the drama or the bad decisions that get made. This is what Tyrion is faced with, but it's on a much larger scale. So I think there's a lot. This is really cool because there's a lot going on here, and it's another example of a face speaking volumes. Like Tyrion's, look, we just had this long conversation. We've been on this topic for quite a few minutes here, and it's really all based on Tyrion's facial expressions and what's behind them. So that's cool. Yolkboy, did you have a take on any of this, or did we kind of cover it pretty well?
No, I think you guys have got it covered. You thought about that aspect more than me, so
right on. Would you agree that incest is best?
I wouldn't agree with that, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. Don't go there.
Okay. Super chat from Elizabeth Chris.
Just watch it on TV. Just watch it on TV every Sunday for 6 years.
Don't try this at home, folks. Super chat from Elizabeth Chris. Could it hint to Tyrion taking the Lannister side now that his sister's preg and the conversation with Cersei was cut oddly? It could. We sort of touched on that earlier, but the problem is that Tyrion knows that Dany can't have kids. So he shouldn't really be worried about this union creating a child. And if it does, well, that almost makes it simpler. It makes it less simple in the fact that he's still going against his family, and if Cersei's having a child, he's against that child, which is, a big problem for him. But if Dany has a child, then all the succession issues are, then he doesn't have to arrange this crazy, difficult, like, how does he get Cersei and Dany to agree that Cersei's child will be the heir to both kingdoms? How does he get that to happen? Like, that's really going to be hard to pull off. If Dany just has a kid, well, there you go. That's the heir. That's a lot simpler.
How do you convince someone to do that and say you're not going to raise this child? You want to raise the child.
Yeah, that's the part of why this is just really difficult and why I'm down on this theory, even though clearly something happened when they cut away from that talk. I just don't know that it was such a big thing. It may have been, like you said, something fairly simple. All right, well, let's go to Winterfell because this is obviously, as Jon and Dany are doing it, we've got Bran, kind of not exactly narrating it, but
yeah, he is. He's a true Targaryen. Cut to him having sex with his aunt. That's what happened there.
How about Sam should have been like, "Can you said that? Can you go see that? Can you see them what they're doing right now?" So so what did your Shay? You had a lot of notes here. Let's see what you have to say about Sam and Bran.
Yeah, it was funny because Aziz asked me after the episode what my favorite scene was, and I was like, I told me to be negative, but none of the scenes were really standing out to me. I wasn't sure. And then maybe 20-30 minutes later, I was like, duh, Sam and Bran. I loved this scene with Sam's responses to Bran. I love the humor in it. Sam had these, lack of responses, really. Sam, Bran goes, I remember everything. And Sam just smiles, and nods, basically. Like, what do you say that? I remember everything. Okay.
Yeah, just like Sansa, like, I don't know what that means.
And then the other great line I like that Sam had was, Bran goes, I became the three-eyed raven. And Sam goes, oh! And he nods knowingly.
It's so polite.
And then he goes, I don't know what that means. Which is just so relatable, I think, to most people to just go along with something and then be like, wait, I actually want to know more about this.
Does this kid not realize how weird he sounds? I mean, come on, dude.
But I thought it was also really notable that in Bran's explanation to Sam, he said that he sees the past and the present, but there's no mention from Bran of him seeing the future, which it seems like he does because he's seen that dragon over King's Landing and maybe some other things. So it makes me think that Bran doesn't realize yet. Which makes sense. Why would he realize? How would he realize?
Yeah, if any of you guys out there can think of an example of one of Bran's vision containing something that is unambiguously in the future from that point, let us know, because we couldn't think of any. The dragon shadow over King's Landing is a possibility, but there's no way for Bran to have that vision and know that that's a vision of the future. Because dragons have flown over King's Landing in the past plenty of times. That doesn't tell us anything. I mean, it doesn't tell him anything, at least as far as that goes. So that's kind of an open question. And maybe it's one of those things where his powers will grow and then he'll, be more aware or more possible to do that sort of thing. But maybe the show just doesn't want to go that direction. Showing the future just opens up a whole other can of worms that they just don't want to go there, maybe. I could see that being the thing also. Mm-hmm. By the way, does anyone else like the idea of fish cereal? Salmon Bran? No, so I guess not. Salmon Bran?
Oh, Salmon Bran. I didn't get it.
Salmon. Salmon
Brand. Okay.
Again, like Theon.
I was thinking of the band
If you have to explain
Fish.
the joke, it's no good.
I was thinking of the band Fish.
Oh, Fish, yeah.
I don't know.
That's exactly where I went. They have some weird songs. So.
They have a song called Down with Disease that my friends like to say, Down with Aziz.
Oh, I can see that. I love that song.
People point out that Bran saw the wildfire go off. And if he saw the wildfire go off, that's maybe something that he should realize he should see the future, because that's a big event that he would have learned about.
There you go. That's a perfect example. That's pretty unambiguously a thing, because that wildfire detonation did not happen in the past. Yeah. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So, but more seriously, Sam and Bran. Do you guys think this is a possible pairing in the books? Or, I mean, not possible. Of course it's possible, but do you guys think this is likely?
Pairing? Are you talking about shipping now?
No. I'm talking about them hooking up and Sam being like, hey, I found this in a book. Can you verify this? Can you go check this? It makes a lot of sense, but I don't know. It's.
Yeah. I mean, I guess logistically, but I mean, who knows? I mean, we've got a lot of books left to go. So
I think some of us were thinking Bran was staying in the cave, so it's totally out of left field for us to think about these two characters interacting in a serious way like that. So I'm generally maybe more negative about the idea, but I want it to be the case. I would love it.
Yeah, it would just create so many possibilities. That would be great.
And as people point out, if Sam were to write A Song of Ice and Fire after the fact, it would be much easier if he had Bran's, skills to do that.
Okay, got a couple super chats here.
Yeah, we do. From Susan Plumley. Does Bran remember that it was Jaime who pushed him from the window? And if so, how will Jon react towards Jaime, assuming Jaime is headed north? It's a great question. We really can't say. I think that it'll go kind of the way Jon's enemies have gone. In other words, if they're committed to fighting the army of the dead, Bran will forgive them. As we've said, Bran isn't really Bran anymore. I don't know that he is capable of feeling vindictive. He may, be like, hey, that's the guy who pushed me out of the window. And other people might get vindictive. But if Jaime is, earnest in his presentation, was like, yeah, I'm here to help. And he's by himself, he shows up by himself. What's he going to pull? Of course, he's there to help. So I think it'll probably be one of those things that's maybe a little tense, but gets resolved. Mm-hmm. Next super chat, unless you guys have any thoughts or you think there'll be any conflict from that, or
Yeah, do you guys have any
No, I
takes
was
on
just
Jaime
thinking
Bran?
I was just thinking about where we are in the books. So Bran, a couple of times, remembers it quite blurry. He remembers there's something golden about it, but he doesn't piece together that it was Jaime. As far as I remember, that's where we are. But it's hinted that he's starting to kind of slowly remember. So who knows?
To move on, we have another super chat here from Waxed Paper Door. John's real name means that egg, I dreamed I was old, from Maester Aemon's last words, is now 100% sadder. I don't think that was possible. I think that's the saddest line in the whole series. I'm not
Making it
joking.
sadder. No, it really is a strong contender for the saddest line in the series. It's one of the saddest lines I've ever read in any book. Yeah, that's a cool. Oh, here's a good one. Do you guys think? Do you guys have any takes on that, or is that? I guess that kind of stands for or speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think
it does.
You made us all sad now.
Will you read that one?
Yeah, from Elizabeth Chris. Would a bookworm kill a tree wizard? That's the kind of question I can appreciate. Nice one. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Bookworms are the bane of all tree wizards.
Okay. Before we move on to Rhaegar and Lyanna, I had a couple other things. One, Sam asked if Bran saw that Jon and Dany were returning into Vision, but it was just a raven.
He just holds the letter and was like, ha ha.
Really funny
Nice.
Comedic duo there, I think. But also, it's like, maybe clarification. I don't know if it's maybe a strong word, but a lot of people have been calling out Sam for not crediting Gilly, and I think that was mostly a joke, people calling him out. But I just want to say that Sam clearly read that boring book for work, and that's why he cut her off originally, that he knew what he's like, I know this.
Yeah, he said, I copied this diary.
I think that Gilly saying it was for the audience's, benefit and for humor, and maybe there's something else.
And maybe to keep it, maybe make us think. What did Sam realize? What just happened? But he did. He just didn't have all the dots to connect. He didn't know that Rhaegar and Lyanna's kid was. Yeah. He didn't have any reason to connect that to Jon.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think that seems Gilly was actually, superfluous and not very important when we know that he just knew it and it could have played out a lot of different ways. Oh, how sweet. Words are wind. But words are wind. This doesn't mean anything, I guess. They said, I crown Ashea, queen of love and beauty. But okay, they said that they spent money on it, so words are wind, but
money
cold hard cash.
Is real, yeah.
11-11, too. No,
thank you, words are wind.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
The crowning.
Okay, so Lady Gwyn, take us away. You are our resident R plus L equals J expert, so let's let you get us into this.
Okay, happy to get into this. This was a really surreal moment for a lot of us to really hear those words said out loud after so many years of speculating and arguing, which incidentally is not going to end because we still haven't seen them written on the page. So there's always that. But really, just wow, what a moment. And I wanted to really savor it. It did end up to me feeling a little bit rushed because I just would have liked to have greater explication about Robert's rebellion. They kind of dropped that in, and how did that come to pass? Why they show them do it with this marriage ceremony, and kind of maybe more putting all the pieces together for the viewer who may not remember all those little hints that have been scattered across several seasons. So take another 60 seconds or so and tie it all back together for people that might have forgotten all the little things. But overall, I mean, it was very emotional. I was really happy to see it on screen, although you kind of alluded to this before. I think the intertwining of Rhaegar and Lyanna and Jon and Dany during that particular moment was kind of icky.
Yeah, for sure.
Aside from that, it felt a little wrong because I would have liked to really, like I said, savor that moment for Rhaegar, Lyanna, and Jon as their little family group. They're kind of the most famous fictional family that never was, and I didn't get to enjoy that sort of moment because they kind of dragged Dany into it. But overall, I was really happy to see this kind of happening on screen before my eyes. So.
Yeah, it was great to finally see these two together, Rhaegar and Lyanna, and I definitely agree with you that we're not asking for much. We're asking for more than 15 seconds of footage of the two, more than some vows said out loud. So I do agree with you. That was maybe my biggest disappointment of the episode, to be honest, is that I was so hyped up for this flashback, and it was so short, and honestly... Rhaegar looked awfully disappointing to me. And lots of people will point out that it's said outright in the books that Viserys had the same hair, that Rhaegar had the same hair as Viserys. But I don't think that means they had necessarily the same wig. I think they do have a family wig. It's the exact same hair, and I'm going to put it on screen here. You can even see that Aerys the Mad King had the same haircut. He just didn't do anything so fancy as pull some hair back. He was a little more unkempt.
Yeah.
But they did have the same hair, and I think that was meant to, make the audience comfortable and familiar with who this character was, to make it very clear, again, the lowest common denominator thing. But I think it might have backfired because a lot of people thought that this was Viserys. So I think they made them look too similar. I mean, you can see they're wearing like very similar clothes and hairstyle, and we don't really get a good look at his face during that. But whatever reasons they decided to do this in a meta level, I like to look at why they could decide to do this in world, why this happened, if there is an explanation. And Viserys' clothes being so much like Rhaegar's and his hair, I really like the idea that Viserys was emulating Rhaegar, that he looked up to him and that he saw him as like, I want to be like a Targaryen, a true Targaryen.
Dressed up like his older brother.
Dressed up like
makes
him.
It sad.
It's really sad. It really depressed me, honestly. I feel so bad for Viserys now.
Yeah. That's a good catch. It's kind of funny to think about it in retrospect. It's like, oh yeah, it fits really well like that. It's both, for the people who didn't necessarily understand what was happening, the wider fandom, it was important to have these visual reminders to kind of clue people in. But it has this other effect, this meta effect, which is really interesting. Did any of you guys have like random friends or family members you rarely hear from like message you to be like, okay, so what is Jon and Dany's relationship?
Yes. Yeah, that's been going on for a couple weeks. People just like, wait, are they cousins, brothers, what, half sister?
Yeah, multiple Facebook messages from people I like never talk to are like, what's Jon and Dany's relationship? Like, are they sister? Are they brother sister or half brother? What is going on?
Yeah.
Is this in the vein of am I allowed to enjoy these scenes, or should I be feeling quite guilty now?
How gross? Exactly how gross is this? Is it really gross or just kind of gross? I guess we got a super chat here.
I have this for after this section. I don't want us to get off topic again like this. Sorry, super chatters, but I'm taking control now that I'm in control here. I'm not letting Aziz just go off on tons of other things. So there was this. Before we knew for sure whether Rhaegar was going to be there, there was lots of rumors flying about this actor Wilf Scolding, whether he was playing Rhaegar, and there seemed to be a lot of clues. So I was quite sure we were going to see him, and that's who it was. But he tweeted after the episode using the hashtag "Who's your daddy?" I just love it when the actors get into it, and that name.
Yeah, the name.
Wilf Scolding.
Wilf Scolding. That is a good name. Yeah.
But I wanted to also point out something else that I just couldn't unsee, and I normally wouldn't point it out, but I saw other people on Twitter point this out, that the shots of Rhaegar and Lyanna just really made me think of Padme and Anakin Skywalker. Just
reverse the hair colors.
Yeah, just reverse the hair. Yeah, from the Star Wars prequels, especially because Aisling Francois, or however you say it, I totally mask her. It's not that. It's Franciosi or some weird thing. Not weird, but she looks a lot like Natalie Portman. But this is very similar. Like they're in these green, idyllic situations, and everything they do is gonna screw things up later. They just are making a huge mistake here, and so I can't help but think of the two of them right there.
So, Aegon and Aegon.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of jokes about that. I think your favorite disease was probably the Newhart joke.
The Newhart joke. Tweeted. This is my. Hi, I'm Rhaenys. This is my brother Aegon, and this is my other brother Aegon. So this has been very controversial. A lot of people are like, "There's no way George made two Aegons," and a lot of people are like, "This is probably what George intended." And yeah, so it's really tough. I don't think that there's a definitive thing here, but I think it could be Aegon. I think it could be Aemon. What do you guys think? Well, actually, first, before anything, Bran's take is the funniest of all.
Bran's take is that he's Jon Sand.
Yeah, that's just wrong.
That's Samantha. That's just wrong. That's not how it works.
Can see everything.
Bran, he can't see what's written in the books because that's wrong. Yeah, that's not how it works. He's not Jon Sand.
To be clear, you gain the name of a region if you're raised there or if your parents are from there and that raised you. So you could be, you could be a Sand.
Everybody already knows
else.
John was born in the South.
Yeah.
Even though the mystery of his parentage is a thing, no one thinks he was born.
It's not like he's now has a Dornish mother, and then maybe you could make some argument. Even then, his name is Jon Snow.
Yeah. it defaults to the father's noble house or to the region if it's a tiebreaker. Like, for example, Brynden Rivers and Aegor Rivers, their father was the king, and he, made it known that wasn't a secret. So if it's by father, you would go, they would be Aegor Waters, but their mothers were noble parents, so the default was that noble parent because they lived there in the Riverlands.
Yeah, exactly. So it would be Bran is silly.
Anyway, yeah, so that was really funny. As Bran was being pedantic and wrong. Okay, so let's talk about Aegon or Aemon, or let's hash this out because it's pretty interesting and fraught with controversy. Never has a name been so controversial.
Okay, so I guess the show saying it's Aegon. If you're a betting person, you would think the smart money was it on being Aegon and it being the same. However, I think there is like some element of doubt because they do mess around with names. If it had been Aemon, just let me be devil's advocate. If it had been Aemon, they might not have wanted two Aemon Targaryens, like they didn't want two Walders, so they changed Hodor to Willis, and they changed Asha to Yara, because it was too similar to Osha. So, there is precedent of them messing around with names because they don't think that it's the name itself that's important. They think it's the clarity which is important. So I think there is some kind of element of doubt, and enough to make it interesting. Who wants to be ruined on the surprise? We'll have to wait for the books for like the 100%.
Yeah, both of them work. I mean, they both make sense. There's compelling. There's a lot of foreshadowing for it being Aemon. And there's just a lot of, it would fit really well if it was Aegon. Basically, I mean, imagine you have Aegon the 6th and Aegon the 7th. I mean, and Aegon, adds new tension to the slaying the live, who's the real Aegon, And he could be Aegon, if Jon is Aegon, then he's Aegon the 7th, and the 7 has all this significance. So, yeah, I can't decide which works better. At first I was like, oh, it's definitely Aegon. I immediately did an about face on thinking it was Aemon, but then thinking about it more, I was like, no, it still could be Aemon. Lady Gwen, what do you think?
Well, I think, I always thought it was going to be Aemon. There's that great line in Jon's point of view where he thinks nor was he Aemon Targaryen.
Yeah.
It's a great quote.
Big foreshadowing ones, yeah.
Sort of a foreshadowing or, ironic foreshadowing. But maybe it's just literal. Actually, he's not Aemon Targaryen. He's Aegon Targaryen. It's hard to say. I mean, like Yolkboy said, it's conceivable the showrunners just used Aegon so that they could simplify things, because their whole history of not wanting to have duplicate or confusing names. On the other hand, we have two Aegons in the Dance of the Dragons, the second and the third, the elder and younger. So, we know George loves his historical parallels. So, he's could be that we're really just being set up for the 6th and the 7th here in the books. We have a friend, Jace Targaryen from Westeros.org, who pointed out the Elder Brothers' comments about Rhaegar's rubies, which a lot of fans have long speculated have some symbolism that just seems somehow significant, and maybe specifically about the family or the Targaryen family. The specific quote is, 6 have been found. We're all waiting for the 7th. So, if Jon is Aegon the 7th, well, 6 Aegons have been found, apparently, so far in the story. It'd be great if we were just waiting for the 7th to be revealed.
Yeah, they both fit so
Technically
well.
a lot more than 6. I think considered 6 official ones, but there have been quite a few.
King, that's a kingly title.
Yeah,
the
kingly
royal
title. No, it is.
But you're right,
Hey
there's
guys,
been a ton of
I've got a joke. What does Rhaegar like for breakfast?
What?
2 eggs. That's Aziz level shit. This is what doing this every week with Aziz does to you.
We have a comment from Jeff Gnarly the Long Snapper, our first sword. He says, if this holds in the books, then we will have Aegon versus Aegon, with most of Westeros not really believing that Aegon is Aegon. Well, everyone just says they are backing Aegon in ambiguous fashion as the 2 Aegons battle it out to see who is the supreme Aegon. Yeah.
Team Aegon. Yes. I was thinking we're going to have Fagon and Rhaegon, or how will we deal with this in the fandom?
It's really cool. Yeah, I think the book readers won't be so confused. Multiple Aegons isn't so confusing for book readers. And yeah, so that's all pretty good here. So there's the other question is when Jon finds this out. Well, there's a lot more questions, but another question is, when Jon finds this out, is there any chance he changes his name? Does he start going by Aegon Targaryen?
No, I don't think so. And we even have that quote from A Dance with Dragons from Jon 1, where Stannis says, I offered you a name. Jon says, I have a name, Your Grace, which is, of course, about the Stark name, but it could also be about a first name.
I think he would prefer the name that his father gave him, not his sire, because he does, he believes, he believes that Ned is his father, even though it's not his sire. I think that'll probably be how that goes too. Mm-hmm. So real tricky.
So chat from Emma Smith. Oh. We would get an egg pun from Yoke Boy.
Yeah, you're a scrambled egg.
You guys, see? This is it. This is what infiltrates my brain every week. And then I start coming out with rubbish jokes every week.
Yep. Yep. Dani's got egg on her face. That was another one that came out.
Come on.
But
that was almost sexual as well as these. Double point.
I don't know about almost.
So I'd say, I guess you 3 are Team Aemon in the books, is his name, or would you say you're Aegons now?
I'm now not sure. I was full Team Aemon.
Full Team
before.
Aemon.
Yeah,
I'm still full. This has not changed my opinion one bit, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again many times. I am Team Jon Visenya Snow. I think Rhaegar thought he was going to have a girl. He wanted 3 heads of the dragon. I think that's what he wanted.
Visenya. Yeah, he couldn't know it was going to be a girl.
I don't think he couldn't have known. I think he only planned for a girl, and so Lyanna just didn't have a boy's name, just left in the lurch.
So that is by the way, that segues us to the other, as if I keep saying there's only one other question. No, one other big question is here. Yeah, did Rhaegar name him Aegon? Was that part of the prophecy that he would be named Rhaegar? Or did Lyanna take that onto herself? Because technically when Jon was born, Rhaegar, the other Aegon, and Elia and Rhaenys were all dead. So... Yeah.
So that could be what she then came up with. I think I choose that Rhaegar didn't tell her that it was Aegon, that he should name him Aegon. That Lyanna was like, this is all that's left of the Targaryens. It should be Aegon. Yeah.
So you can see why. Like you said, like Yoke Boy, you said this earlier, and it really, as we've discussed it all here and laid it all out for everyone, what you said is really even more true now, which is they're both possible, and that makes it more fun. Because the mystery remains. We're not like, oh, his name's Aegon, in the books. Now we still don't know. We just have something else to consider. So that's kind of cool. I like that. Mm-hmm. All right, so we had some super chats that we haven't gotten to.
Up there.
They are both sort of related to this.
They're related to this, but it was better to have this first. Susan Plumley, do you think the show could be combining the book Fagon and Jon as Aegon storylines as far as the Golden Company possibly switching to his sides?
Ooh.
I don't see a conflict between Jon and Dany, to be honest, for next season. I just don't see there actually being any serious conflict because they know there's so many more important things. I don't, and even without that, I don't think Jon cares about the throne.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. It's possible.
Agreed. Yeah, did say.
Bringing the Golden Company in having the Golden Company a storyline include their Targaryen / Blackfyre history seems unlikely, but that is kind of a way to like adapt it. You know, that would make sense to kind of give some of that stuff to Jon. But I agree with you, O'Shea, that Dany and Jon's conflict will exist, but it won't get to the level of marshaling armies against each other. Any other takes on that? All right, let's go to the next super chat.
Glab do 5,000. Is the book Fagon plot built on someone's, Connington's, hidden knowledge of Jon existing rather than the other Aegon being spirited away? I would think it would be built on him not knowing, I guess.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Yeah. That is an interesting
that's
question.
My thought, is that I think he would have had to not know about Rhaegar having another son, because it's not about it being little Aegon who was maybe killed there for Connington. It's about it being Rhaegar's son. So if Jon is Rhaegar's son, he would care about that.
He would, yeah. If it's proven to him, if he can, that's always the rub, is he has to believe it, and that is going to be difficult. But if he believes it, then that would really matter, especially if somehow he finds out that Fagon isn't really a Targaryen, which is pretty likely.
Yeah. Well, doesn't that make his arc all the more tragic?
Yeah.
If he finds out that he's backed a fake Targaryen and Rhaegar's real son has been out there all along, without him knowing about it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but at no point does Jon Connington think of Lyanna. He doesn't. He was banished from Westeros before Lyanna. No, he wasn't. He was banished during the war. Rhaegar had already run off with Lyanna. So certainly Jon Connington's aware of Lyanna, but I don't know if does he say anything about it?
He doesn't, and there's a lot of speculation that he might have been among the group of men that went to the Riverlands with him, because he went with an unnamed group. So I don't know.
So I think that's enough Aegon, Jon, Dany talk for now. We spent a lot of time on it, but there's a lot more we can cover in future live streams. We'll certainly have plenty of time to think about it. More things will come out, more theories will arrive, more book references will appear. A lot of us are going to reread the books considering these new information, maybe looking for clues that Jon's name is Aegon, looking for clues that, Jaime and Cersei stuff, looking for clues about the Ice Dragon and all this stuff. This is really... I'm excited for this next reread. I've done so many.
Super chat from Ashley Bailey. That's my last name. Do you think Varys knows Jon's parentage?
I don't think he does. I don't think if they introduce it, he does. Yeah, I'm still thinking show.
Still thinking show. You think it's different in the books? You think he knows?
I don't think he knows in the books either. Okay. He might though. I mean, he was around. He was certainly around. What do you guys think?
I give him a lot more credit in the books than I do in the show, based on how much he's dropped the ball.
I think it's a lot more likely in the books. Yeah. What do you guys think, Lady Gwen, Yolkboy? Any thoughts on Varys knowing about this parentage in the books?
I think not, because I think like Connington, it'll be the sort of that piece that takes his whole. Varys has this beautiful plot that extends back decades into history and forward into what's happening now, and this to be the one thing that kind of takes it out would be pretty.
It'd be great, wouldn't it, if Jon has kind of ruined all these nefarious plans
just by being who he is,
the oversight.
Yeah, that would be an interesting kind of taking the wind out of Varys' sails if he knows there's a real... Because to him, I don't think it matters that it's actually Rhaegar's son. The point is to get their candidate on the throne, not Rhaegar's son. They just... Making him seem like Rhaegar's son sells the lie. It makes it work. But to them, that's not like something they actually care about personally.
Super chat from Frey Seagrove Nelson. That's a good first name for very
Nice.
fitting. Was Jon the baby Aegon from Dany's House of the Undying vision? No.
So definitely not. Elia and Rhaegar's holding that baby when he's born, and Rhaegar was dead for months when Jon was born. Or had been dead for months when Jon was born. So that is the real.
Been confirmed as Rhaegar, Elia, and the original Aegon. Aegon #1.
Yeah, 1-6. Yeah, we need new terminology to describe all these different Aegons. Okay, so let's move on to the other aspects of Winterfell, the Sansa Littlefinger stuff. So, Yolkboy, take us away.
Yes, so maybe Littlefinger's weakness. There's a weakness in every big schemer. I think that's something from the books that you kind of learn to understand. And Littlefinger's, quite obviously was Sansa, dating back to, her mother, and probably seeing elements of her mother in young Sansa there. The theme that we've talked about over the course of these episodes we've been doing is the student becoming the master. Said in previous weeks that both Bran and Arya had kind of surpassed their masters in some way in the story, and that's probably what their journeys away were ultimately about. And that to complete the story, then Sansa had to do the same, and she's done. Sansa fanatics have been saying this for years now, years on end, and I thought that it was nice to see Littlefinger die, but I think the sequence was kind of marred, in my opinion, by the writing of the build-up in previous weeks, and maybe even stretching back to Sansa's over-brutalized and under-learned arc over many seasons now. But now the Stark kids have returned from their journeys and their training. It makes storytelling sense. The next step that they start to work together and set aside any differences, and it was great to see that. That's classic storytelling, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you wonder how similar this might be to the books? That's one of my big questions. Is this whole scene? So, Lady Gwen, tell us what you think, and include your thoughts on whether how much this could or could not apply to the books.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week, this quote, "When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies and the pack survives." We all knew that was coming. We had kind of narrowed it down to being in this episode. But we combine that with the famous quote from Ned, "If you would take a man's life, you owe it to him to look into his eyes and hear his final words." And so we get this kind of compelling narrative from the Stark siblings, working now as a pack, passing the sentence, hearing the final words, and then swinging the sword. And they did that, kind of in three-part, just the three of them. So I do think that was well done, and it was satisfying to see Littlefinger die at last. I do agree with Yoke Boy that it was marred by some of the writing choices they made. I'm still not psyched with some of it. But regarding, books, is this like the books? I still think that it will be Sansa. I think for a lot of reasons, and particularly going back to the Ghost of High Heart, and her predictions about that was clearly Sansa killing a savage giant in a castle made of snow. In my heart, I've always felt like that's Sansa killing Littlefinger. So I think it'll play out more like that in the books.
Cool. Yeah, so Yoke Boy, at what point in the scene did you realize what was up? Did you figure it out before, or were you just like right down to the wire, like, oh, cool?
Oh, in the
moment when Sansa summons her sister, tells the guard to summon her sister, and then going into the moment, yeah.
To be honest, I was really confused by this arc, and a lot of people have been confused. Like still now, they're saying, "Yes, was Sansa and Arya acting last week, or was it real?" And even very learned kind of scholars of Game of Thrones have been confused. So I was like, I don't get this. It didn't suck me in, and I didn't fully understand it until it, came into fruition. How about you, Lady Gwyn?
I think how did I feel about it? I mean, wait.
No, I mean, my question was...
What was the question?
My question was, at what point did you realize that Sansa and Arya were together?
Pretty much right at the last moment. Well, I have to say that, this is how I expected it. Well, I expected this to go like this in the books, so I had been very frustrated over the past couple of episodes, as I vocalized here. Mm-hmm. So, I was very glad of the outcome, but it was so. In a sense, I was surprised because I kind of given up on that, but it wasn't surprised like yes. It was more of like, oh wow, pleasantly surprised and
Wow,
relieved.
thank you.
that we finally gotten to this point.
It's a relief when something like hits the note. You're like, oh, thank God that happened.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm still not really psyched with the path they took to get there.
It was a bad path. We can say that.
Yeah, I think we can all say that that's not good TV.
Yeah.
I think they even confirmed something that we talked about last time, that they wrote the sequence backwards, and we did discuss that last week about how they.
That's what you said, isn't it? Last week you said it seems like it's being written backwards.
They knew the answer, and they knew sort of here, and they just
admitted
kind of
it,
backfilled. Yeah, and they did admit it, I think, in the after episode. So I don't know. I think they could have done a little bit of a better job at it, and obviously the books are going to have an easier time showing internal character development and stuff. But, well,
this was
it is
like
what it is.
If you watch the scene again, it's really funny when your perspective is so much different. When Sansa sits there and closes her eyes and kind of thinks really, and then opens them and then like goes to the guard, go get my sister. It's like it's so much different when you realize, okay, I'm about to have Littlefinger killed. I need Arya for that.
for me, I talked about this earlier. I knew what was going to happen here, and I felt so bad for people during the week in between episodes where they were so upset about what's going on. I just wanted to be like, no, just hold on. It's not that. It's bad TV, but it's not that. But when I was watching it, it seemed so obvious to me, everything that was happening, that this was a ploy, and that was the case for Cersei as well, though less obvious. But once it just seems really clear to me. So I was like looking around the room, seeing if anyone was seeing that there was something fishy going on here, and no one was. And then Aziz started going, oh, and he started like saying sounds like every line. I was like, well, Aziz knows.
I figured it out because of Bran. Bran's presence gave it away. It's like, no way is Sansa killing Arya in front of Bran. That was what gave it away to me. I was like, oh, Bran's presence is the real tell. Mm-hmm. And also the angle of Cersei looking at, or of Sansa looking at Bran right when she turns her head. It was that angle where she could turn her head. It was that side view, and it was like, it's coming. I started giggling.
Right. And we even talked about it real early in the season, how Bran would be the one to give that knowledge of, Littlefinger with the knife at his father's throat. So,
that's true.
The bad writing just made me kind of give up on all that. So
It tricked us. It was a different way to trick you.
To be fair, this is a trick because these are two characters that are POV characters for us. Three characters, because Bran's involved, and for us, the audience, to just not see these scenes to trick us is just really poorly done.
Yeah.
All around, it's a hallmark of bad TV from quite a while ago, where that's what they would do for the drama. And there's been a couple of things this season where something has happened off screen and we just have to explain that it happened off screen, whereas I feel like it's a big enough important thing that it should be on screen.
Yeah. And so if we can unpack kind of what happened, Sansa wasn't like playing Littlefinger the whole time. She kind of was, but she was legitimately concerned about Arya. And then, as she kind of alludes to, she says, I'm a slow learner, but I learn. And that kind of explains it in a vague way. She figured out what was going on after processing it all. But there's also a deleted scene that we should probably refer to, that Isaac comes. Apparently, there was a scene where Sansa goes to Bran and is like, "Hey."
Is that a deleted scene, or is it from the preliminary outline?
Okay, yeah, maybe it wasn't ever filmed.
Either way, a lot of that stuff we're going to talk about next week. This isn't one of them, but a lot of it, I worry about it being spoilery for people who don't want season 8 speculation.
So this wouldn't be season 8 stuff, because if Sansa's talking to Bran in this either cut scene or cut outline scene,
I think
it was Sansa asking Bran to verify some of the stuff.
Yeah, I think he said one of the things people said was in that scene. I haven't checked it or seen if it was in the outline or what the deal was, but was that he talked about seeing Sansa and Arya's destinies.
Yeah.
Which that says something to me. I'm just trying to be cautious about people who don't want.
One person here saying it was a deleted scene,
it was a
film scene,
not from the preliminary outline. Okay,
so we'll see it probably
great,
when they release the season 7 Blu-ray and all that. So we'll have to see we had to talk about that more when it comes out. But let's talk about Littlefinger's actual death. The meaning of it. Like, his arc comes to a conclusion. He's been a character that's been around since the beginning, so it's a pretty major death. I mean, we've talked about how the show doesn't do major deaths as much as it used to, but really what's happened is that there's been kind of a separation. There's kind of you might call a main character, but there's 2 tiers. There's like the core characters, and then there's the major characters. They've stopped killing the core characters, but they still kill major characters. A major character is like Olenna or Baelish, but a core character is Sansa or Arya. And they're not those characters, just none of the core characters have died in a while, but plenty of major, quote-unquote, major characters have. Even this season, which has less death, there's still a lot of, important characters that aren't around anymore. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an important distinction to make. But yeah, Littlefinger had one really interesting observation before his death, was that he figured out the Dany and Jon thing. He's like, yeah, they're going to hook up. And he's certainly right. So that's maybe another lesson that maybe one of the final lessons for him to impart to Sansa, because I wonder what Sansa is going to think about Jon and Dany being together. That's a whole nother thing that we haven't explored that we'll maybe talk about some other time. So
yeah,
Sansa, Arya having their little thing out on their little kind of talk afterwards was kind of nice. What did you think about this, Lady Gwyn?
About
Sansa and Arya coming their last little meeting on the battlements there.
I thought it was, kind of the culmination of it was in line with what I had hoped would happen, that they're finally working together, and the callback to their father. I did like that little scene. It was such a relief to me.
I bet. I bet. I would have been stressed out about it too if I had been spoiled. These times like that are when I'm really glad that I know certain things, because otherwise I would get frustrated and it would fill me with sour feelings towards something. And in this case, it was like water on my back, like a duck.
I was unhappy, but I know some people who were really truly stressed out about it. So. Yeah.
It's really, in a way, it's very much what I said at the beginning of this episode, and it's something that Game of Thrones does a lot, is they take bad routes to get to places, but we like where those places, where they get to. This is a really stark, I didn't mean that as a pun, but an example of that, where they just, like, the plot was very bad, but it finished very well. We really liked where it ended, but we really didn't like how it got there. There's a lot of them where it's like a little lesser, it's like, it was kind of a crappy way to get there. And this was a bad way to get there.
In my opinion, this is the symptom of them having no coherent source material. And they're going off bullet points, and you can almost see the bullet points. Littlefinger's got to die in this method, but how do we get there?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess another extension from this too is she can take his face.
That's something I was definitely wondering about. Is it seems like she'd be foolish not to save his face.
Maybe
she definitely just slit his throat, so his face was fair game, I think.
Maybe maybe she goes to kill Cersei eventually after all.
They're using Littlefinger's face. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think the pieces are there for this to happen, for sure. I appreciated in this scene this bit of deceit from Sansa, is that I thought there was a bit of a parallel between both Sansa and Cersei being deceptive, but it's deceptive in a way that tricks the audience. Both cases.
Yeah, that's kind of stuff that you can't really pull off in the books, because we're seeing their thoughts. Like you can only do so much of, like, Ned Stark never thinking of Ashara Dane or never thinking of Jon's real identity. Like, you can only do so much of that before it's like, why doesn't Ned ever think about any of this stuff? But never mind that. Here's a cat.
Yeah.
This is Casanova. This is the brother of the Siamese cat that we've had on a few times, Xerxes. They don't look anything alike, but they are brothers. All right. So Winterfell in general, again, we can't go too deep into what's coming, because there's just it will require us to prepare a lot of that. But just think about what we just saw with King's Landing was pretty insane, was terms of characters being in one place. Sandor, Gregor, Cersei, Jaime, Qyburn, Davos, Podrick, Bronn, Brienne, Dany, Tyrion, Jon, Missandei, Varys, Euron, Theon, and others. Like, I probably missed a few. But that's nothing compared to what we're headed for at Winterfell. I mean, assuming the dead don't get there first, which is entirely possible, but it could be like, woof.
Yeah. So that's a lot of people. We still have one question, though. Where is Gendry headed from? I think it's pretty likely that he's headed for Winterfell, whether he's leaving Eastwatch or headed with Jon and Dany, or has left for Winterfell from Eastwatch before the attack even happened. I don't know. But I guess he'll be there too.
He needs to. He's disappointed that he can't row to Winterfell.
Nothing stands between a man and his boat. He's done the land faring for too long, and he's got to get back to his natural environment. I think I made that joke last week.
Winterfell is nicely inland, so that is no water. Unless you're looking at the blurb for Clash of Kings. Remember this from like the late '90s when Clash of Kings was coming out? It said from the blanks of the Dreadfort to the forbidding shores of Winterfell. Like what? The forbidding shores of Winterfell. That thing is as inland as a castle gets. What are they reading? Are they reading Jojen's prophecies about the sea flooding the?
I see a comment here from Jay Weir 1121. Hopefully there's a Dothraki dressed properly for the snow. Yeah, is Dany going to need a whole new set of wardrobes for all of her men?
We have a question, like a question we pulled in advance that relates to that
really?
Directly. Actually,
I didn't realize.
We'll get to that in a little bit. In fact, so that question we'll actually address. Let's talk. So yeah, as far as we got.
Wait, we're gonna super chat from Acre Frey. He hasn't written his question. Here we go. Historically, when viewpoints converge in the books, people die. The question is who?
Yeah, with so many people converging, that is a huge topic.
Yeah. Of course, a lot of those people aren't POVs as it happens, but a lot of them are, and a lot of them are POVs that we don't consider. We don't think that will die right then, like Arya, Sansa, Jon, for like right there, Bran, all those conflicts. We're gonna still get the POVs for them. Maybe Arya's gonna leave. Like we speculated on that, but it seems like they're not gonna call those people. We had another super chat though, unless you guys have something to say.
Go ahead.
Okay, Undying One. Fans of the band Fish, if again Fish comes up, and A Song of Ice and Fire are both super detail-oriented. Their show history and repertoire are as rich as George's world. Yeah, glad they came up, so that's why they came up. Yeah, I mean, I like fish. I specifically like fish food, the Ben & Jerry's flavor.
Fish fans also, like A Song of Ice and Fire fans, go all over to different places to talk to each other and hang out with each other, and they speak a language that only each other understands. Like like you get a group of Ice and Fire people together, and we talk about stuff to someone listening with like, what the hell are they talking about? I imagine it's similar for Fish fans. They're just like, there's all these songs and references they make that like no one else would have any clue what they're talking about.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Before I was in A Song of Ice and Fire nerd, I was a Deadhead.
Oh, cool.
It's the same sort of group, the same milieu, and there is a definitely unique language that no one else understands.
So let's talk about the wall, the final shot. So this is what I was talking about at the beginning. No, there's no way George can write something as cool as this dragon looks. He can write things that are more detailed, more depth oriented, more make you think more. But the visceral pleasure of seeing this amazing undead dragon is something that's really the show it's in its element, really well. So Shay's pulling up this amazing shot that I just love so much. Look at that. That is so badass.
See the Night King on Viserion.
Yeah.
Said it, Aziz.
Viserion, thank you. So, what did you guys think about the final scene here? I was glad at least that Beric and Tormund survived. It would have been kind of an ignominious death for them. But,
yeah, and we can assume they are still alive because they aren't going to die off screen. It's possible they won't make it to Winterfell, or both of them won't make it to Winterfell or Castle Black. But I have to think that at least one of them will.
Yeah, I agree. And I watched again to really double check to where they were at. The wall collapsed right outside of where they were going, and they got away. So so Lady Gwen, were you awe-inspired by this? Was this just like, you knew it was coming, but it was still amazing to see it, or?
It was amazing, but I was stressed out about Beric and Tormund. I was trying to keep my eyes on where the heck they were going and how were they going to get out of this, because they were on top of the wall. So it's just like every scene I was like, wait, where are they now? And I was so sad, so sad about the Syrian. So that was my take was, man, this is gonna be just one of the saddest things.
I know you pointed out, I think it was last week, Lady Gwyn, a dragon is no slave quote, and then we had Daenerys actually say it here.
Said that, yes.
Which
that kind of
go ahead.
Gave you a little hope, maybe.
Yeah. It made me think that there's some foreshadowing there for Viserion getting claimed by someone else. There's a couple ways that it could happen that we've had people speculate on. One, can Bran warg into an undead dragon? Is it possible to skin change that? I don't know.
Mm.
He should try. 2,
Mhm.
if Euron gets a dragon horn of some sort when he goes to Essos, could he take control of an undead dragon? It's 2 questions I had about it. 3, maybe it just dies. It's no slave. It has to die. I don't know. I hope that someone can take control of Viserion from the Night King, but I'd say I think the odds of that are pretty low.
I would agree. Yuck Boy, what about you? What do you think about this scene?
About the scene, it was a feast for the eyes, wasn't it? It was, something that's been speculated on so much. Let's just assume for one moment that the similar thing happens in the books. I have heard a million ways the wall's going to be breached. Yeah. No one ever said a dragon. In all that time, I never read it.
Not until like a week ago. Once the undead dragon was raised, the idea came. But before that, I agree. I don't remember ever hearing that. Ever.
Mm-hmm. That is interesting. We got a super chat.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I meant.
From Bryce Acree. Thanks for a great season to History Westeros and Radio Westeros. I look forward to off-season book content. Right. Cheers. On. We do too. I definitely look forward to it.
We do too.
Speaking of book content, we have this quote from Dany for Clash of Kings, which means House of the Undying. From a smoking tower, a great stone beast took wing, breathing shadow fire. Now, I don't see how that's a stone beast, but obviously the circumstances of the books could be a lot different. The point is, this could be, the equivalent in the book. This is a great beast that took wing and breathes, quote, shadow fire. There's no smoking tower. But
it is clearly sees. I'm going to lay down the truth for you. Viserion gets grayscale. The White Walkers can control people with grayscale. They're also going to control John Connington and all these other Shireen. They're just gonna have blue eyes.
I actually thought of that grayscale dragon theory.
I did too before. I had the idea that this could happen. I still don't think a dragon could get it.
Yeah, it's a little weird to think of a dragon getting grayscale, but the idea that the others can control it because they can control death, and grayscale is a cousin of the gray death, and it basically is like the power of death. Yeah, it seems kind of high magic, but I can't throw it away.
Super chat from Remy Martin. On a personal note, I hope the Night King makes it to King's Landing so Tyene can come back. I picture like a wink there. I agree.
That's right, Night King's Landing, right?
I honestly would just like to have, besides the thing of whether you like Tyene or Ilaria or anything like that, I would like to just have resolution for that, to know that Ilaria isn't just languishing in a prison or for the rest of her life, because Tyene's dead by now, I'd say.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So there's another Dany quote here. Lady Gwen, you want to read this one? It's at the end of Dance, and it kind of gives us a little bit of perspective on the wall itself.
Yeah, this is cool. The next morning, she woke stiff and sore and aching, with ants crawling on her arms and legs and face. When she realized what they were, she kicked aside the stalks of dry brown grass that had served as her bed and blanket and struggled to her feet. She had bites all over her, little red bumps, itchy and inflamed. Where did all the ants come from? Dany brushed them from her arms and legs and belly. She ran a hand across her stubbly scalp where her hair had burned away and felt more ants on her head and one crawling down the back of her neck. She knocked them off and crushed them under her bare feet. There were so many. It turned out that their anthill was on the other side of her wall. She wondered how the ants had managed to climb over it and find her. To them, these tumble-down stones must loom as huge as the wall of Westeros.
Yeah, that's a great quote. It really relates strongly. Maybe it's hard to exactly connect how these, this could show us what's going to happen with the wall in the books. It doesn't exactly tell us that, but, it kind of shows us maybe that it's coming. It's coming close. Obviously it's coming. The wall's got to come down, right? Or at least got to be breached like this. So maybe, though, this is an interesting point. Maybe this leads us to believe that in the books the wall will just be breached like this and not completely collapse like all the way through, like the horn bringing it down entirely. But I don't know that we can really glean that from this, but it's certainly possible, because obviously showing the entire wall coming down on TV would be expensive.
Yeah.
And kind of who would be seeing that?
Yeah, the entire wall coming down is a huge catastrophe and a level besides the whites and White Walkers getting through.
Yeah.
Assuming it melts, which I guess it wouldn't melt, but either way, it would cause huge issues. I think.
It wouldn't melt. Yeah, it wouldn't melt in the short term, I guess, because
term.
winter is so overwhelming right
even
now.
that, I wonder, that much that it is, would that cause an earthquake, in a certain region? I don't know what it would cause. That'd be interesting. We got a super chat, though, from Dornish Dan, who said, joining in thanks to History Westeros and Radio Westeros for enhancing the GOT Season 7. Also, looking forward to post-season episodes. Thank you
very much, Dornish Dan. Appreciate that.
all your super chats.
Thank you.
This season,
yeah, Dornish Dan.
Yeah, all the super chats, all the support. Thank you. All the new subscribers that have come over and subscribed to us. That means a lot. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's been a great season for us on that side of things, and we're very appreciative. It's a wonderful thing about this fandom. We're very happy to be doing what we're doing. You guys all are making it possible. So we have a lot of questions, so we're not going to be able to get to very many of them. I was afraid of that, but that's how it goes. There's a lot to cover. It was a 20-minute extra episode, the season finale. That's just a lot to cover. Some of the questions we sort of incidentally answered. Well, we can still do a couple of them. One thing I wanted to bring up really quick: where the path of the undead is going, right? I guess they're gonna go to, the first thing in their path would be the Umberholt lands and maybe Karstark. Maybe then they'll go to Winterfell, but there's more people at White Harbor, so it's kind of hard to say, but something to think about. We won't go into that right now, but just I wanted to throw that out there for people to think about and for us to talk about some other time. Do you guys have any characters that you're immediately worried about? Like we usually do our worry of the week. This is kind of the worry of in between seasons.
Same thing I've had every week. Yara. I'm worried about her. I don't think she's done for. Go on.
Okay, I think my pick is Daenerys for the end game. If it's going to be a Nissa character, I would say that she's favorite in my opinion, which is very divisive, but I did a poll and it was almost 50-50 people agreeing and hating the idea. So there you go.
All right, wow.
That's pretty even.
Lady Gwen, any thoughts on that? Are you worried about Jaime or anything? Anybody else maybe? Bronn or
I'm kind of worried about everybody. I think, Beric, I'm not sure I'm that invested in Beric, but I'm pretty sure he's doomed. Not now, but he's got some appointment with the Night's King. Worried about Sandor and pretty much everyone who's not the people, Jon and Sansa, Arya, and Bran. I expect to survive. I think everyone else is on my list of worries as we get closer to the end.
Okay, so what I think we'll do with the rest of these questions is we already talked about having more to talk about, in future live streams in our wrap-up episodes. So I'm going to save all these questions. I got questions from Jeremy Tomasulo, George the Golden, Galia, Jeff Gnarly, Lady Bird, U.S. Navy Dave, Anthony Gonzalez, Ellen Evans, Lady Jane Celtigar, Ryan Bonnet, and plenty more. So y'all, this is like 2 or 3 episodes in a row where we haven't gotten to nearly all the questions we wanted to. And I guess, what can we say?
What happens? The show gets longer and we get more fans and it just happens, I guess.
But we will take these questions later. We have plenty of more postseason coverage to come, even as our book coverage is resuming. So we'll get these questions in there and we can start with some of them next time.
Can I just say real quick, Juan Felipe Mendez pointed out that, did you notice they were all in King's Landing and nobody said anything about Ilaria? They didn't ask about her.
They didn't even ask about her. They just figured she was dead.
I guess that's too bad.
Do you think at the end of the story, everyone will be dead and Ilaria will climb out of King's Landing and say, "What the hell's happened?"
Okay, so again, I'm going to remind everybody that we have more live streams coming soon. We're going to have a variety of guests. We're going to have Radio Westeros back as much as possible, maybe from time to time. And going forward, we'll be making announcements as far as that goes. So y'all let everybody know where to find you and remind everybody about your new episode.
Yeah, we got an episode on the War of the Five Kings. It's a good, beefy episode about the politics, the drama, the characters. It's got an advert from Walder Frey, so come and check it out. Thanks for being with us through the season. It's been great to be on the show. Thanks to you, Aziz, and you, Ashaya, for inviting us, and all your watching us. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We wouldn't think of doing it without you guys. It's just now how we do it. Radio Westeros and History of Westeros covering the show. It's just how we do it.
This was a great coverage this season. I'm glad I was in all of the episodes last year. I skipped some for multiple reasons.
Yeah,
but,
glad to have you back full time.
Which is my turn. Sean gets to plug his Twitter account all the time. And Aziz told me I should plug mine as well. I'm at Mirany's Not the sexual position, but the actual book Problem. I had it before the sexual position, and
that must have been a nightmare for you.
It was hilarious, actually. I had just switched to that username within the last year of that happening, and then they said it, and I was like, well, they said it, and then I got all these people that asked me if I was referencing the sexual position. I was like, no. Not quite, but I do like to picture George's face every time he sees me comment on his Not a blog. He's like, that Mirany's Not. I hate that thing. Why are you reminding me about that?
So one person has asked, at least a couple people asking if we're streaming this weekend. We're not streaming this weekend because we're going to DragonCon, which is here in town. We live in the same city as DragonCon. We have people visiting, Game of Owns. We have Haley Bowery from the Manimals here. We have some other people coming. Kyle from Azor A-Hype is coming. I almost said Kyle.
Dragon Rider.
Yeah. I almost said it. Azor Ape.
Oh, Azor
A-Hype. That's weird.
But, we'll be very busy with that this weekend. But if you're going to be at DragonCon, you can send us an email, or what'll be best is during the convention, Aziz and I will be tweeting what we're doing there, and so you can just contact us through Twitter and we can meet up somewhere.
We'll probably be going to the Game of Thrones party on Friday. That's not a sure thing, but we'll probably be going to that. And then there's a Game of Thrones photo shoot on Saturday. We might show up for that just to see who else is there.
See them.
And so those are good places to try to find us. But we don't have like a panel or anything, so we can't exactly name a spot we'll be.
I will be at all the Dark Crystal panels I can get to.
Cool.
But
looks like we got another super chat.
Yeah, from Quote Music. Do you think there were any hints in season 7 as to how Stannis' arc will conclude in the books? It's an interesting question. I would say
by its absence.
Yeah, his absence. I think that's true. I think that is true. But I would also say, we were talking a little bit about grayscale, and I can't help but think of Shireen is tied to Stannis' arc, obviously. Grayscale. Maybe I have some thoughts on that.
It does confirm, or at least not confirm. It does point to something that's been that's a theory that I've agreed with for a long time. I think the first person I saw to make this theory was Stephen Atwell of Race for the Iron Throne, who was a guest for our Blackfire Rebellion episodes. Maybe someone else came up with the idea before him, or maybe he just favors it. Either way, the theory is that Stannis will sacrifice Shireen in Winterfell when he's, after he's taken Winterfell back from the Boltons and he's holding it for the North, and the White Walkers come and he's besieged there, and that's when he'll sacrifice Shireen. And that is still in play very much because, as we see in the show, everyone's converging on Winterfell. All these armies that are going to go fight the dead are converging at Winterfell. So in the book version of this could be Stannis still kind of leading the northern effort. Maybe Jon's not there yet, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Jon is there, but he doesn't know who he is yet. So Stannis is still kind of running things. And that this could be how we get to that point in the show where he sacrifices his daughter. And then after that, I don't know what comes after that. But so yes, there are some clues, and there's probably some more. But yeah, honestly, I haven't thought about Stannis too much in terms of this year's season. But I do think about Stannis a lot still.
Every night I look over and I'm like, Aziz, what's on your mind? And you're like, Stannis Baratheon.
The one true king. I'm just daydreaming about the one.
Super chat from Undying One. Worried about George. He says he loses interest in the story if he has to plan it too much. That, the show, and the pressure of finishing, I don't see it. Well, you're much more pessimistic about this than I am.
I agree with what you're saying, that he has said those things, but I don't think he's going to not finish it. I think that's part of his struggle, but I don't think he's going to just give up on it. Yeah, that seems a little far-fetched. Because
and I mean, you can. We've seen him in person a few times, and he clearly still is passionate about it. Yeah. He's excited and interested and happy about these things. It can be hard to write, but I think he still cares about it.
Yeah, he still loves going to conventions and hanging out with people. He's still very much a down-to-earth guy, and I don't think that. I still think he's a good guy. Like, he's a decent person, so I don't think he would leave everybody hanging like that. But we'll see. Obviously, nobody can predict the future. We're not Nostradamus here. Hopefully, we all get what we want. So let's give thanks to everybody. Thanks again to Radio Westeros for being with us all season and for future off-season live streams. and perhaps guest appearances on each other's scripted episodes. We did talk about our plan to do the Dance of the Dragons together. That's, we're still very early in the planning stages of that, but it'll happen eventually. Thanks, of course, to Ashea for all her production work, which is, of course, ongoing. Thanks to our friend Michael Klarfeld for the video intro, and which we also use as an outro. Mm-hmm. Thanks to Joey Townsend and Jesse Koval for our music. Thanks to our chat mods, LML and Snow and Winterfell and Eliana, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have
Jinx
other
is
chat
there
mods?
too, but she's not there right
now. Yeah, Jinx is a chat mod. Yeah, I didn't see her today, so thanks to Jinx as well. And yeah, so we appreciate that because there's always one or two trolls. We usually don't have very many. We had one particularly active troll today.
Did.
He just kept changing his name and coming back after being banned. But hey,
really weird insults.
Very weird
All
insults.
I gotta say, dude, if you want to be a troll, you better get your insults a little better.
She kept saying, "Ashea nail biter. You don't bite your nails."
I don't bite my nails. It's true. I absolutely do not bite my nails.
I do.
That said, I think it's a fine habit to have, not something worth insulting.
Yeah, it's not exactly very demeaning. He's like, "You nail bite." I'm not insulted by that. I'm like, yeah, I bite my nails sometimes. So,
you have some really nice people in your chat. There's one troll, and it gives everyone a bad name. But I've been in the chat, and they're all really nice guys and gals out there.
Someone asked, why do they only read questions of people who donate? Well, we don't, but frankly, we get so many questions. We don't have time to answer all of them.
The past 2 weeks, we have almost entirely done that because you guys are giving us so many super chats that, like, by the time we answer all those, we get through our content. We're at 3 hours, and we can't answer the questions that we've collected, and we have been collecting questions, which is why we're going to do another stream next week, and we'll get to more of those. But previous weeks, we definitely... these 2 episodes were just longer. It was harder for us to get through it. There was more to talk about.
We have answered a ton of non-paid questions.
Yeah, we have.
But we're not going to ignore paid questions.
But again, if you want your question answered, this goes again, I've said it many, many times, send us an email. And even then, it's not a guarantee, but it's a lot more likely than me managing to see your chat in the quickly moving chat.
It's mostly a logistical thing. I mean, there are tons of chat messages flying by constantly. We can't just see them. Yeah. So.
But we also got a super chat right then from Jill Wright. I don't see a question attached, Jill, but thank you so much for that.
Yes. Certainly, if you send us a question later, we'll answer it on a future stream. So also thanks to our patrons, as I often do lately. I grab a few names of people who don't have regular shout-outs because I really like the names and because I want everyone to get in there every once in a while. Today I grabbed a batch of mostly of people who are at the Maester or Archmaester level, who the big draw there is access to our scripts. And if you want more information on our Patreon levels, just go to patreon.com and go to the History of Westeros page and or the Radio Westeros page. We have a variety of things that we give in addition to shout-outs. It's not just about that. So thanks to Archmaester June of the Wicklow Hills, healer of the Lesser Poxes. Thanks to Weaver of the Broken Syllable, Lord of Bull's Meadow. Thanks to Gregorio Alinovich, Maester of Moths. Thanks to Silver Tom Rivers, the Bastard Bard of Blackwood, which is kind of hard to say fast. Thanks to Thomas the Listener, Maester of Tongues. Thanks to Lady Tracy of House Silverscales, motto, Justice for All. Thanks to Matthew the Muddy Maester, and he's named so because his chain is so long that he trips over it and falls into the mud. Thanks to Maester in Exile Meredith, Sage of the Jade Sea. And thanks to our Hand of the King, that is the mysterious BR.
We have my Hand of the Queen, Lord Michael Valerian, Knight of High Tide, and Guardian of the DeLorean, Hand of the Queen.
Right on. Also, Lady Suzanne Sinistral, the learned, holder of the left-handed Valyrian shears called Penance, and Hand of the Beard. We have Sir Valentin of House DeGen, creator of the Game of Predictions, which is a fun, free futures market for predicting Game of Thrones theories and outcomes. It's a lot of fun. I checked it out recently and made some predictions and picks. Thanks to Charlotte Ostra, Corsair Queen of the Western Shivering Sea, commander of the Briny Fleet, whose flagship is the barnacle-encrusted violet-hulled Mercenaria. She carries the nacre-inlaid shucking blade Crass Lover. Thanks to Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire, Warden of the West, also the host of the Two-Waged War podcast, which I recommend. Thanks to Lord George Stormsville the Cunning, Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Cabethy Unfrozen is Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light, Defender of the Old Gods and Warden of the North. Lady Kelly McMath of Covington is Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs, Warden of the South. Lord Osborne is of Castle Werewood, spreading the old gods by planting werewood saplings in the Reach, Stormlands, and Crownlands. Motto, our roots run deep. Lord James Tuttle is king of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea, commander of the Royal Fleet consisting of the Narrow Fleet, led by flagship Caraxes, and the Bloodstone Fleet, led by flagship Prince Daemon. The Small Council is led by Lord James Inkblade, the Scholar Knight, Master of Whisperers, Grand Maester Soria of the Barrows, Cinder of the Citadel, Lord Robert Jacobs, Master of Coin, Rosie the Clever, Master of Laws. Our King's Justice is Sir Troy the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian steel blade Fate. Our Queen's High Council
I'm sorry, someone got banned and just got timed out in the chat and I got distracted.
Oh.
Lady Jane of House Celtigar, the Emerald of the Evening, wielder of the Valyrian steel axe, Painkiller, Mistress of Sea Eagles, Mistress of Ships. Lady Mai of House Swan, Mistress of Whisperers, Elia of Upstate, Master of Coin, Grand Maester Elizabeth, middle daughter of Lyanna Mormont, First Lady to forge both the Silver and Valyrian Steel Link, and Lady E.S., Master of Laws, who will have a longer title very shortly.
Yes, we're working on that one. Several people haven't gotten their nicknames yet. We've gotten a lot of new patrons wanting nicknames, and I can only do so many in a day or so. Don't have that much creative energy, but so I apologize to anyone who's waiting for a nickname, but we will be getting to those few who are left as these next few days pass. Mm-hmm. Thanks to Grand Maester Clark, protector of wisdom and beards, on the Council of the Beard. Thanks to our Kingsguard, led by Lord Commander Sir Christopher Dane of Starfall, Sentinel of the Tortine. Thanks to our lords and ladies in their castles, including Lady Direliz of Castle Nyaki, the Alpha Patron, Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell, Breaker of the Second Stone, Lord Skip of the Veldt, Lord of Castle Ganges, Gregor the Toasty, Lord of the Bread Fort, Alicia Everlasting of the Green Blood is Lady of Desert Rose, Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate is Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass, Lord Garin de Haviland is of Devil's Hand Keep, Ashlyn Winter, the Hawk's-Eye, is Lady of Castle Skyfall, Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance, the Lord of the Halls of Castle Hillcrest is wielder of the Valyrian Steel Machete Everglazed, Lord Alistair Whitaker is Lord of the Dawnhold, Lord Bemmy Snugglebunny is Guardian of the Hidden 100-Acre Werewood, holder of the Vorpal Snugglebunny, Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroon is sworn alesmith to House Stark, Grand Master of the Zithomancer's Guild, and Keeper of the Buzz. Brian the Defender is Lord of the Spear Fort and the Freelands, last scion of Clan McCulloch, motto, strength and courage. The Bastard of Wolfswood is first forester of the Old Gods, and sworn to House Ironwerewood, whose motto is listen for the silence. Connor the Dungeon Master is Lord of Catamount Keep and Guardian of the Smoky Mountain Pass. We also have our Queen's Guard.
We have Lord Captain Commander Haima Helmand, the Sellsword Sentinel, Lady Nymeria of House Sea Purtle, Alexander of House Atreides from the Seat of Dune. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Jane Grey, Lady Esk of the Tattered Spire, First Sword of Albion. Brian, the Pest of Hyrule, and Becca the Bard, Songbird of the North.
I see a chat here. Someone saying we get thousands of emails. We don't actually get thousands of emails. We just got about 1,000 emails on the giveaway, the Westeros History giveaway. We don't actually get thousands of emails with questions. Yeah, we just get more like dozens, or maybe the occasional 50 or something. But we can easily get through our emails. That's not nearly as much of a problem. Our Beard Guard is led by Lord Commander George the Golden, backed by Sir Joshua Oakhart, the White Oak, and Lady Rita of the Copper Mane, the Unbound, Dance the Fervor. We have 2 new Beard Guard who have not gotten names yet, so that's filling up quickly, only 2 slots left. And last but certainly not least, we have our History of Westeros Night's Watch, which is led by Lord Commander Daenerys Flint of the Night Fort, avenging the memory of brave Dany. We have First Ranger Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of Green Shield. We have First Builder Patchface of Motley Wisdom. And First Steward, Sir Jurian of the Torrentine, called Palewind. All right, folks, that does it. We will be back soon. If you are jonesing for more content, go catch me on Rawrist stream, which is already started. I'm going to be jumping on there in a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to take a short break and then get on there, but you'll see me on there soon. Some of you guys are probably already checking it out.
Acre Frey said now Aziz can make a power play by being late. That's a great note to leave this on.
I'm gonna enter like Danny. I gotta ride my dragon into that stream. It's funny, I have a ton of Game of Thrones shirts, but I don't think I have a single dragon shirt. I guess I can't ride in that way.
Yeah, I guess so.
Anyway, thank you all again very, very much for being with us, and please come back. Please come back for our future live streams. We will keep the fun rolling. I love hanging out with you guys. I love seeing all the fun stuff happening in the comment box, even if I can't read it all because I'm busy, podcasting. But yeah, it's been a great season. We'll keep it going. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks again to Radio Westeros. Thanks again to Ashea. Until next time, Valar rewatch us, Valar reread us.